Call the meeting to order. Please rise to salute the flag. This meeting is in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Law and has been duly advertised in the newspaper as an official meeting. Roll call.
Ms. Gardella?
Present.
Mr. McCarron? Present. Mrs. Barocas?
Present.
Dr. Osmond?
Present.
Mrs. Rivera?
Present.
Mrs. Cass?
Present.
Mr. Palmieri? Nope, not Mr. Palmieri. He's here, right?
Actually, he is present, but I'm here.
Mr. Walsh, yep.
I need a motion for approval of the agenda.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mrs. Gardella?
Yes.
Mr. McCarron?
Yes.
Mrs. Barocas?
Yes.
Dr. Osmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera?
Yes.
Mrs. Cass?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
I turn the meeting over to Mrs. Pormilli for her superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. For those of you who may have just noticed on your phones, you may have received a phone call or an email. We have called for a delayed opening tomorrow for the safety of our students and staff. It's very uncertain whether it's going to be ice or rain, but anytime there's mention of ice during arrival time, we err on the side of caution. So that, if you haven't seen it, you should see it soon on your phones or receive the phone call or email soon. So thank you for Ms. Irwin for pushing that out quickly for us. This evening, we are here for the purpose of a public forum for comment from our public on the SRRP, our Strategic Restructuring Redistricting Plan. And since the announcement of the recommendations, we have received questions, comments, and suggestions. We have read every single communication we have received, and they have also been shared with the board. We also have updated our Q&A document that was shared with all of you last Friday with the full community and our staff, and we will continue to update that as we receive questions and comments that people would like to have answers to, or if we can clarify things. We will be using that to place any of our responses there for everybody in between meetings. So I do encourage you all to please take a look at that document if you haven't already. Tonight, we do have a few additional slides that we'd like to share with the community and the board on just some of the major questions we were getting or some common questions we were getting so that we can clarify a few more things. Please also know that some things we won't be able to answer yet until we start to go through the process of bringing people together and uniting our staff and our students in committee work. Such as like what will the middle school schedule details be, or the 5-6 schedule details be. Those are the types of things that we won't be able to answer until we really get through the committee work that we will begin as soon as there is a final decision. So I've said this before, I'm just going to repeat it again. We recognize this is a difficult, there's lots of emotions. These are big changes that are being recommended. Lots of empathy for that, understand it. Very well-intended people making recommendations and considering those recommendations. I just respectfully request tonight that when you speak, you try to keep in mind that we are one community and we are trying to create a path forward together to unite everybody and to create wonderful opportunities for our students. We can disagree, of course, but let's just do it respectfully, please. Whatever the final decision is, I want the community and board to know that this school district will do everything in its power to support all of its students and staff through the transition. We will help. With that, I'm just going to start a few slides to review so the board may want to turn around. And Mr. Baginski and I are going to share some information. So again, tonight, the purpose of this meeting is to have a public forum and allow the public to speak to the board. We will allow that shortly after this presentation. It was always announced that this meeting would be a public forum and that the board may vote or may not vote, and that they may push that vote to the next scheduled board meeting, which is February 19th. And so that is what is happening here. There will be no vote this evening, but rather input that is considered, and the board will consider that input and any other existing data that they request. So tonight, we're just going to share a few things as reminders, and then also a few things to clarify, a couple of things that came through from the community to us. As a reminder, the reason we're doing this is so that we can continue to have our strong programs, our strong academic programs, our curriculum, we have an updated curriculum, lots of electives for our students in a variety of different ways, and that we have strong extracurricular programs and a plethora of them, and that we have opportunities for supports and enrichment. And if we don't do this now, those opportunities will have to be gone. We have reached that point where we can no longer not affect our students with this budget. So doing this will help us be more fiscally sustainable and allow us to have opportunities for our students. As a reminder, these were many of the factors through the process that were considered. And at any one time, depending on the lens you're looking through on these items, one thing may weigh more than the other. There's a lot of factors and a lot of weighing back and forth of at what point what weighs more, what doesn't, to make a decision. And it also depends on what lens you're looking through. Obviously, the school district is looking through an educational lens. As a reminder, these were the many models that the committee reviewed. You'll see the blue arrows indicating models that the committee themselves created and reviewed. The other ones were presented first to them. I just want to point out that 4B is listed as 4B because it was, the committee made a recommendation for that one. The first original 4 consisted of 2 high schools, not 1. And that is obviously the recommendation moving forward. As a reminder, this is the recommendation that was shared at the last meeting. Excuse me. And I'm sure everyone's aware of it, and this is the recommendation for the grade spans and the use of facilities. As a reminder, all of these slides are always posted on our district website following the meetings. We also shared the transportation model and the tiers that we're expecting to implement through this recommendation. And with all of the grade level models that I just showed you and shared in the past, there's lots of factors. Well, in transportation, there's lots of factors as well. And the committee, the SRRP committee, was well aware of all those many factors. They spent a lot of time discussing them with our director of transportation. This is a large operation. Transportation runs here in Jackson. Not only is it 100 square miles, but it's a lot of transportation. And it's very important that we don't overburden one tier because then it backs up into other tiers. And in fact, some of you may have even seen that happen most recently where your children are arriving home later or being picked up later because we have a significant amount of drivers out. Right now we have a lot of illness going around the schools. I'm sure you have experienced that as well. And what that does is if we don't have enough drivers, then it obviously allows for, or we end up with backups. And so these tiers being recommended, we've tried every which way. It's a big chess puzzle trying to figure out what is the best way to not overburden tiers so that we have enough buses and drivers in the event that we need to go from tier to tier. So this recommendation does not overburden any tier and also provides the availability of after-school sports activity buses that we have struggled with for years. Hence, a big portion of why we're making the recommendations we are for the tiers of transportation. So I hope that clarifies a little bit. We got some questions about that over the last few weeks. So we also received several suggestions or recommendations to look at a 7-12 model, meaning that some recommendations that people had suggested from our community after we presented was to have 2 7-12 models, right? So Memorial would have 7 through 12, Liberty would have 7 through 12. And so our committee did review those recommendations, and it was eliminated for several reasons. These are some of the reasons listed here on the slide. So it was discussed extensively, but it's important to know, and it's sometimes, when you don't have all of the information, I can see why this makes sense to people. So overall, we're trying to lower our operational costs in a permanent basis so that our budget is a lower amount from year to year. And when you're operating 2 of everything, you have a greater expense. By combining, you do not have two of everything, and you actually provide more opportunity for students to have the resources available because those resources are now in one building versus being split among several buildings. That goes for everything, not just co-curriculars, it also goes for academic programs and interventions and enrichments. So having two of everything is not best for our students right now and also not best for our budget. So that was one of the reasons that this model was taken off the plate. The committee was also concerned about the developmental ages from 7 through 12. Many of the 7 through 12 models you see in different school districts are with smaller amounts of students. This would be a very massive amount of students. And then once again, you've heard me talk multiple times over the past year about the redrawing of sending areas. We would need to absolutely change the sending areas in this model for our elementary schools feeding into these schools. Because again, we do not have equitable sizes in our schools. And when you don't have equitable class sizes of students, you lose programs for some students. A simple way to describe that is, for example, you may not be able to run a business academy. You may not be able to run a certain elective for a middle school student anymore because there's not the same number of students in that facility to require it to run, to be able to have it run and be fiscally responsible, or to have just enough students in that class. And so when you have imbalance of numbers in your schools, you want to make them balanced in order to have equitable programming. So that was another reason why we'd have to redraw lines. And we heard from our community that our community wants friends to stay together. This holds true for the other suggestion that we were seeing come in. Again, the committee did review a 5-8 model. In the way that we reviewed it, it was for 2 high schools, but we did speak deeply about a 5-8 model. Some of the suggestions coming in from the community was, again, to do 2 5-8s and or to combine. So when you combine a 5-8, you're looking at 2,000 students, and that is some of our most vulnerable age group. So really not a good idea to have 2,000 students at some of the most vulnerable ages that we see threat assessments and bullying and those types of things happening, let alone the academic pieces of that. And developmentally, there is such a huge range, and I'm sure with your own children and some of the teachers, you see that difference between a 5th grader and an 8th grader. The committee was concerned, again, about developmental ages of those students all being in the same cohort together, especially on buses. And again, we go back to if we do 2 of those schools, what that means. Same thing that I just said about the 7 through 12 in regards to not lowering operational costs and not being able to provide equitable programming and services for our students.
So in the context of the redistricting recommendation that was made, there are 2 major financial considerations with regard to the restructuring plan. The first, the plan provides us with an opportunity to lower our overall operating costs, which can help us to establish a new lower baseline for spending that will carry on for future years. And second, the potential sale or rental of one of the schools will provide the district with a revenue source that will allow us for not only to close a budget for 25-26, but it will also allow us to offset facilities and maintenance costs for future years as well. I think we are all in agreement that potentially renting a school facility would with some predictable, consistent income in the future would be ideal. However, there are several factors such as whether or not a rental would be enough to close the deficit, and also what future costs and risks that would be for the school district moving forward. Whether the decision is to sell or rent, I could assure you that the school district would absolutely seek to maximize the financial return to the school district, just like we did with the Rosenauer property. This would include getting an independent evaluation of the sale or rental of the property and ensuring that we acquired all necessary county and state approvals before we took any further action. With regard specifically to the permanent operational savings that could potentially come out of the restructuring, we're looking at right now about $8.1 million that would provide permanent reduction to the budget. These savings are projected to come from $5.7 million in personnel salary and close to $2 million in savings from health benefits associated with the position eliminations. It will also include a very conservative estimate of operational savings related to the decommissioning of of a building, and these savings would include energy and maintenance costs. And for the closing of the Getz School, those costs would be estimated to be about $430,000 per year. And for the McAuliffe School, it would be $280,000 per year. Unfortunately, our school district is no stranger to making difficult staffing cuts. And throughout the S2 era, we've actually been forced to eliminate 285 different positions during those 7 years. During that time period, though, 95% of those position eliminations were done through attrition. And what that means is that when a staff member either retires or resigns, that staff member was not replaced. And so just last spring, the district eliminated 70 total positions in order to reach a balanced budget. And all of the certified staff eliminations last spring happened through attrition. So while no one really wants to reduce staff, the fact is that our personnel-related costs make up about 80% of our budget. And so when it comes to closing deficits, there really is no way of doing it without impacting staff in some way. I can tell you that our district will do just as we have done in the past 7 years and identify the position eliminations that will enable us to protect our programs to the greatest extent possible and to provide a thorough and efficient education for all of our students. We've been asked quite frequently why do we have to do this now? Why can't we phase this in over a couple of years? And the truth is, we don't have the luxury of time. Our hand has been forced by the financial situation that the state has placed us in. While this is not a presentation of our budget for next year, we already have some very strong estimates and projections for what we believe our budget will look like. I want to emphasize that these are estimates, and there are still some very important relative unknowns at this point, specifically state aid. Given what we know, we are looking at a $13.8 million deficit for next year. I want to emphasize that this is without redistricting. As there is in any budget, there are positive impacts to the budget and negative impacts to the budget. And when you look at this upcoming budget, there are quite a few negative impacts. First of all, we are expecting an 85% reduction in categorical state aid for equalization aid, which is about a $2.5 million reduction from last year. We will not be budgeting for any sale or rental of property. In this budget, we budgeted for a $7 million revenue with the sale of the Rosenauer property. Our contractual salary increases are rolling over for an additional $2.5 million. And our out-of-district special education tuition, aid in lieu, employee benefits, and utilities are all going to cost the district millions more in 25-26, and you can see the projections up on the screen. For a grand total of $17.6 million in additional budgetary costs in relation to 24-25. On the positive side, we will be able to increase the tax levy by 2%, which is the maximum allowed by law, which will be just over a $2 million increase. And unlike this past year, we anticipate being able to roll an additional $750,000 into surplus into next year's budget to help add to next year's budget to reduce the impact of the increased expenses, and also to utilize at least $1 million from expected capital and maintenance reserves during next school year to help offset needed facilities work. So all considered, this is where the $13.8 million deficit stands right now. And as I said before, we're going through the budget process, and the first budget presentation will be in March. So if we don't restructure, what does this look like? And I think that this community at this point is sick and tired of hearing this and seeing this. I know we are, and unfortunately, as I said before, we were placed into this position. And so the prospect of not redistricting, restructuring, and going after the $13.8 million deficit, the way we tried to do it in the past, would mean some very, very significant staffing cuts. We're talking about more than a total of 200 positions, including administrative certified, non-certified staff, most of which, the majority of which would not be able to be done through attrition. Eliminating some of the programs that have stood out in this school district for years, including the athletics, the academies, ROTC, reducing advanced placement courses. These are the things that make a school district, and these are the things that unfortunately will undoubtedly be impacted if we have to move to a $13.8 million deficit closing without doing any redistricting or restructuring. So I can't help but end with this, and when I say that The board has a difficult decision to make, obviously, but when you consider the alternative and this alternative path, I think that this is a decision that absolutely has to be made.
Thank you, Mr. Baginski. So following up on earlier what I said about our Q&A document, I just wanted to pull out a few items just to highlight tonight, but please go in there. There's many more responses to questions there, but these were some that I felt were important to say out loud. So did the district consider traffic at different times of the day in their consideration of the recommendations of the facilities? And so yes, we did consider and study traffic at all hours of the day. Remember, we frequently travel to our schools at all times of the day to ensure that we had full understanding, and I know many of the board members have done the same. Particular attention was paid to the times that the students would arrive and dismiss for all different reasons. And that is one of the reasons why the recommendation for Liberty was for a Tier 1 use, because at that time there is less congestion around Liberty during the times of high school times. So it is obviously not ignored, and it is important, but the piece that we're planning for is to reinforce lessons on defensive driving, expand upon our orientations for our drivers, for our new students, and continue to work with our police department and the county office on flow of traffic to and from the campus. Regarding comments about the traffic officer that spoke about Memorial being a better option due to traffic, why did we make our recommendation before getting a full traffic data? Again, as I said, we're aware that there's more traffic in certain areas, and that information that they have provided for us is also helpful data and information, and we appreciate the time that was taken to do that. It adds to other data that we have reviewed. But again, we are aware of that traffic, and we were planning for that based on all factors that are being considered. And as I said before, looking through different lenses, we made a recommendation based on what we felt was educationally a sound decision for our students, and we will continue to make those kinds of recommendations, what's in the best interest of our students, but safety is obviously very important as well. Well, the total bus time has been coming up a lot. I did say this at the last meeting, but wanted to point out that we have software that helps to push out the routes, but it doesn't stop there. After the software pushes out those routes, we have the availability to then put the human touch to that and work to create routes that are 50 minutes or less. Obviously, we strive for less, and we will continue to do that through this process. What is the long-range projection for the school usages? Again, if you look back onto the slide 22 in the presentation, it goes over our projections for enrollment that we used. And obviously, none of us have a crystal ball, but it shows the enrollment numbers warranting this configuration all the way through 5 years, obviously longer. Now, are there, again, with no crystal ball, are there some things that may happen that decrease enrollment or increase enrollment? Yes, of course. And this model does support either or. Now, the projection moving forward, should there be a massive drop in enrollment, and maybe that's 5 years, 7 years from now, maybe it's longer than that, the model that was recommended allows for 5th grade then to return to elementary, 6th grade to go to the middle school model again, and then to, if need be, close another facility if enrollment dropped that much. So if you're looking way down the road, whomever is here at that point might be able to make those recommendations. So it does allow for that in the future as well, with not a tremendous change to the district, but a smaller impact than what we are currently suggesting for next year. So again, I do encourage you to go in and look at more of those Q&A. So finally, to conclude, just a few of those updates for the board and the community. As we've said many times over and over again, we know this is hard and difficult, and as Mr. Baginski just so well said, we really do not have a choice to do nothing at this point. And so I'll close with the same way I started, is I think we have very well-intended people making decisions, making suggestions, and then finally making a final recommendation. And so please know, assume best intentions, and we are here to provide responses and answers to your questions, and we will continue to do so throughout this entire process. So with that, I am going to turn it back to the board president for board comments.
Okay, I guess we'll start. You wanted to, we'll start down at that end, I guess. Come this way, everybody's this way.
Okay. Is this on? Hello? Okay, sorry. Didn't know if you can hear me. All right, so I wrote some things down that I wanted to share tonight and try to get a conversation going at the dais. So, you know, as a board, we recognize the gravity of the decision that we're making. None of us are taking it lightly. I want to remind everybody that we all live in the town. We have children. It's a big decision. We get that. But I think I speak for all of us when I say we are committed to making the best decision that we can with the information that we have. So just to educate the public a little bit, because, you know, we have more people in these last few meetings than we typically do at board meetings. But a school board operates under procedural guidelines. So there are rules that are in place that we have to follow to help ensure transparency and to make sure that we're adhering to like the open meeting laws, right? And so this means that discussions among the 7 of us who are on the board, we don't get to just talk as a group, you know, out at a diner somewhere. We don't get to do that. The only time we really get to speak as a group is when we're sitting up here in front of a public, or if we have executive session. But executive sessions, there's like rules around what you could discuss privately, not in front of the public. And so, I mean, I'll be the first to admit that before I was on the board, one of my gripes with boards when I would come to meetings is that they don't always talk very freely up here. So you don't, you know, you kind of hear us vote, but you don't hear the discussion, right? So tonight, I think it's important that we have a conversation in front of, and I think everybody up here believes it's important, in front of the community. So I guess I'll start it off and I'll tell you some of the things that I've been thinking. And I'll be very honest with you, every day I kind of think of something else, and depends on the hour of the day which way I'm leaning. But I'm curious to see what my colleagues think, and hopefully it will open some discussion. So I do want to start with, at the last meeting, a parent came up to the microphone, and she kind of demanded to know where we all reside. And, you know, I don't think that matters, because I think we're all here for the right reasons and we're trying to be ethical, and I have to give props to the people who are up here. I haven't once heard someone on this board say, I want to do this because this is good for my kid, or this is where I went to school. That really hasn't happened, right, which is great. But I'll be transparent, and I live on the west side of the town. I have 3 kids. 2 of my kids graduated from Memorial. I have a 22 and a 23 graduate, and then I have a graduate this year, my last one. All right, so this decision really does not affect my family personally, right, where my kids are gonna go. I am also a graduate of Memorial, and I have great memories of Memorial, but I don't think that that's enough to sway you one way or the other. Like, we have to look at bigger picture here, right? This is a bigger issue. So as I've been going back and forth in my head, I want to share some of the concerns I have. So I think we all could acknowledge that there's animosity and division that we've seen throughout various ways, right? We've seen it in public, we've seen it on social media, we're getting a ton of emails, we see it in the emails, and even at public comment. And the fact that we can no longer hold cross-town rivalry games between the high schools is just another example that animosity does exist here, right? And we're not doing those games because of civility issues. So to me, this is deeply troubling, but again, it highlights that there is actually an issue here, and that brings me to my biggest concern, which is student safety. And merging high schools, to me, especially with existing tensions, and it raises some legitimate safety questions. And I'm particularly concerned about the proximity of the proposed high school from the committee to the location of the police station. And, with Memorial, it's closer. And I do believe that this proximity, and please don't get upset with me, I'm going back and forth with pros and cons. I'm just letting you know what how I'm bouncing back and forth. But I do believe that proximity could be a deterrent to issues before they actually happen. And you can have a quicker response time. And so I'm curious, because I know some of the people on the board have been on different committees than I've been on, and what is the perspective of law enforcement, right? These are our professional people. What do they think? And, hopefully my colleagues can respond here in 1 second. But how are we ensuring that the students will feel safe, right? Because you feel safe, in a classroom, you could control a classroom environment as a teacher, but then kids have to travel around a building, and how do they feel? And before anybody responds, I want to add to the public that I am aware that we house students in Liberty currently, and I'm not saying that they are in danger, so I'm hoping that nobody will twist my words, but it is a smaller population of people, and so, we're not really comparing apples to apples, because the population and the size is going to change, and when you have more kids in one area, it's a real concern. So I have 3 other things that I want to bring up as well, but maybe we could start with that one and just kind of share our thoughts on what we're thinking there. Mr. McCarron, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so my background, for people that don't know me, is in law enforcement. I'm a retired police officer. I was also a school resource officer. So I share in the sentiment of logistically having a high school in a closer proximity to a police department and centralized in town, to me, makes a little bit more sense. And that's through my lens. I appreciate Mrs. Parmilli's bringing up, everybody has a different lens in this audience. We all have different backgrounds. Mine happens to be in law enforcement, currently in real estate. So another thing that I also kind of take into consideration is logistically where it's located, and where our different buildings and values of our different buildings, and what's going to carry our district moving into the future with sales and balancing our budgets and doing projects that we have to do, instead of continuously going out to the public to raise taxes. Anybody else want to share?
I mean, I feel like the discussion's going all over the place, but I'll piggyback on what Brian's saying. I would like to talk about one-time use, though. In order to balance a budget, right, Jackson's been having to do it all wrong. We start off with the deficit, right, and we sell land, and we're playing on credit card debt. So we're selling land and we're patching up a budget. We're cutting staff, we're patching a budget. We're closing Rosenauer, we're patching a budget. If you were to ask, and I'll ask Dan, what is the standard of accounting in a school? What do you do when you come with a one-time use fund? Like, you hit the lottery, you're selling a piece of land. What is the actual thing that we want to be able to do with it?
So the one thing I would say you don't want to do is to add it to recurring costs. So when you're talking about adding something that's going to be a cost every year and grow after, year to year, that's something that we ran into with the COVID funding, with the ESSER funds, because we were at such a budget deficit, we needed to use some of those funds to support some of the same programs and staffing that we just needed to do it to sustain programs. But that costs you, because when that goes away, you're left with an even bigger hole.
So I guess for Jackson, right, listen, many of us in the room, maybe we have seniors, we have juniors. We're talking about the people that are in Jackson, right? They got second graders, pre-K, right? These are the people that are going to be here, and they might witness that we're using one-time funds to balance a budget. How many years are we going to do that, do you feel?
Well, I mean, what I said before, we're looking at permanently reducing operating costs. If we could do that to a point where you get that down to where your revenue levels are, then you're at a balanced budget and you live in that balanced budget world. I will tell you, it's extremely difficult to do it, when you're an S2 school district, when you are in the state of New Jersey where you have a 2% cap, that's the most you can raise your tax levy, and everything else becomes more expensive. It's a deficit model, not just for us, for every school district in the state of New Jersey. I mean, we arrived at a place much sooner than other school districts did, but you mathematically cannot continue to operate in that fashion without just being in a deficit.
You know, I attended the Ocean County School Board meeting after the fact, right? Because I just couldn't do it on the night of. And Charles Muller was there, I know that you attended. And they had a BA there, right? One BA didn't show up, I didn't catch what town he was from, but the BA was from Point Beach, okay? I mean, this guy made it seem like it was amazing to be a BA of a school district, right? This is a non-S2 funded district. I don't know how many students are in that district, but there's a couple of things that stood out to me that I don't even think we can even understand, because we never got to do it. But, you know, they have, you know, I appreciate what you did on the slides where you showed us what our fixed costs are, you know, because even though you don't know what our state aid's gonna be, I'm sure that, you know, from this educational piece, they said that budget planning starts year after the budget ends, you're starting again. You know, it's like any business. You're going out, you know, what your increases are in health insurance, utilities, all that. So thank you for that. But, you know, he pointed out in Point Beach, they're not an S2 district, right? They get their money. They don't have to worry about anything. Their education foundation, that BA said that every year he can rely on 50 to 100K from his community. I mean, these are things we don't even know. We're such a big community, and there's been niches. I'm here my whole entire life. There's niches. There's a neighborhood here and a neighborhood here, and we have never gotten along. Okay, never. There's always been some type of, you know, you live here and I live there, and we've never raised that kind of funds. You know, that's athletics, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. You know, I'm going to digress. I know we're talking about high schools, and, you know, I get it, but I just feel like the funding piece is a really big piece of why we're sitting here at this table today.
No, I agree with you too, but I want to go back to safety for a minute because I didn't really get a clear enough answer. So we got your perspective, Brian, and that's great. But Ally, Megan, Brian, you were all on these committees. What did you learn from law enforcement? Share with me what they shared with you.
Sure. I'm going to take it over and start for a second, and then you could just hit me if you want to jump in, either one of you. But I know that before Thanksgiving, the prior board president reached out to town council and traffic safety regarding concerns for traffic over on the east side of town. At that time, we discussed McAuliffe. The reason we discussed McAuliffe, we did do some building facility tours, and I'll be honest, I had like a 15-minute turn-in, you know, and it just might have been the time. And I said, oh my God, like, are these what the parents have to deal with? So obviously, we brought it up and we talked about it. At that time, Officer Candido, right? I believe, no, I'm sorry, I'll go back to my actual document. They sent out an SRO officer, and the captain said that it was a 4-minute turn at both arrival and dismissal at that time, and there was no traffic concerns. That 4-minute is not considered traffic. Now, we sat in the meetings, there's an SRO, right? We discussed traffic, and there's traffic concerns, right? We're bringing a large amount of students over. Obviously, we have concerns. If you've lived in this town long enough, there's been a lot of tragic deaths of teens, okay? It's just what it is. There was one high school and there was tragic deaths. There's 2 high schools and there's tragic deaths, right? We're 100 square miles. Think about how many towns that is at the beach level. I mean, because everybody's moving to the beach. You got Manasquan Point. You could probably go Brielle, Manalocan, all the way down. That's 100 square miles, right? It's that many municipalities that we're dealing with in one town. From my perspective, the SROs had, you know, the SRO president and the committee had some concerns, or big concerns, regarding traffic safety, the ability for someone to not be in traffic and to get somewhere. Go ahead.
And his kids go to Liberty. But with that said, because I know, you know, listening to so many people and so many emails and doing my own research as well, right? Traffic is not how we make decisions on educating our students, right? But, give me a minute.
Hear her out, hear her out. We have to have this conversation because we all aren't on all of these committees.
But what we do make decisions on is what the committee did do a great job on, because most of the committee, 90% of it, was educators. I myself am in analytics, and that's why you always hear me reciting the numbers. So while so many people had so many suggestions, and we welcome so many of the suggestions, some of them don't necessarily work, as Ms. Permilli and Dan had put up top, right? And so going back to the committee, they did a great job setting up the grade banding and what made sense for this district moving forward. What we did not discuss was the financial aspect. That was a conversation that did not come up during the committee. And so when people say, why are you postponing the vote? And why are we making decisions? Because for all of us, we felt we needed more information to figure out, as we've learned from Dan just explaining, right? We have to balance a budget, right? And as a Board of Ed, our job is to not only hire the superintendent, but it is also to make sure that we have policies in place and that that budget is balanced. And at the end of the day, listen, I have a soon-to-be senior. I don't even know if she's sitting here. But while I love her and you know, many of her friends that will be graduating as well next year, my concern is also for, as Megan pointed out, our children that are much younger, that are going to be living here for a really long time. And what does that look like moving forward? And what we have in place right now is that's sustainable with no income coming in. So those are the things that, yes, while I mentioned transportation, now you understand why. There's a lot of things we look at that are important to all of us. And that is why it is taking so much time to make these decisions. It's not that we looked at the committee. I was on that committee, and I was actually part of the model that was picked, because at the end of the day, we needed to make a decision that was fiscally responsible for this district. So that is why it is taking us time to go back and forth and back and forth. And we can look at buildings all day long. But like I said last time, it's not the buildings that make these kids, it's the people in them that make these children. It is the families that they come from, right? That's who's making these kids. I can speak for my own child. She came home the other day and she said, Ma, I have to show you something. She goes, I love my English class. And I'm sure that teacher's listening now, so thank you for all that you do. I was so happy, right? That tells me she's getting so much out of that class. So that's why it's taking us so much time, because we have to look at all of these things. And I haven't slept in months. I think most of us haven't slept in months and days. And it sits in our head all night long. And we think about our families who are traveling. We multitask, right? Where's my mom? We're all mom, right? Our moms and dads, right? We're multitasking. And that's what I thought of, right? Sure, I did my rides. I like certain schools. I thought they were nice. And then there's times when I go back to the other side and go, oh, but what is that going to look like for my families traveling, right? And yes, I'm on the memorial side. But for those of you in who write some of the newspapers locally, I was not born and raised here. I was born and raised in New York. I'm from Rockland County, New City. I'm very near a township that some of you might have read in the paper called Ramapo. So I'm very familiar with what our townships look like. With that, I was in an elementary school that I used to walk to. And in the middle of my second grade, they decided to sell my elementary school that I used to walk to. I then went to an elementary school where we were all split up. And then eventually went to a middle school where there were 3 wings. One wing got to go to one high school, one wing got to go to another high school. And I had the luxury of being, once again, split from my friends into 2 different high schools. And yet, here I am. So,
Okay, I'm going to bring this back to my original question because I still didn't really get an answer. So,
I'll answer it.
But I appreciate everything you're saying. No, you make good points. You make good points. But
I'll answer it.
my original question was not about traffic per se. because
I'll
I
answer
agree
it.
with you,
I can answer it. I was getting prepared to answer it for you. I can answer it.
Okay, so
So-
I just wanted to.
Yep, go ahead,
just
repeat it.
It's not about traffic, because I agree with you that our job is not to solve all of the traffic issues. But it's about animosity, and I don't believe that just goes away instantly. So what did anyone talk about, what is it going to be like when kids are in a school who, I'm reading things online, who have been, like, it's been nasty.
So I think your original question was, did anybody in the committee communicate the location of the police department being a factor? So I will say that there was a member of the Strategic Planning Committee who did say that, who did bring that point up as a point of information, and that person was a police officer. So obviously, we value that input. And as you said, Dr. Osmond, we currently do have students there, and I respect that you acknowledge that. And so we're not, our students are safe. We know that. Our students are safe. I just wanted to let you know, and the community know, although I think I have said this before, is that the plan was to have, because we were bringing so many high school students together, first of all, the plan was to have a committee to talk about, of students, to have plans for how do we unite our students together in a positive fashion through activities, events. In fact, there is something already being planned in the works for that, of bringing the high school students together, and thank you to the high school principals for that already. And we have had several suggestions already from our wonderful staff on how to do that. These are things that our educators do well. And then the other piece of that was for safety purposes and the number of students was to have both of our SROs in the high school as well as our armed security that we currently have. So that was one way that issue was being addressed. So I just wanted to make sure you got your question answered. It was brought up at the planning committee.
So if I'm being honest, I keep going back to safety because to me, I don't feel that that can happen overnight so quickly. That's my concern. Just because I'm reading emails, I'm looking online, I'm listening to comments, and I don't believe it happens overnight, and that very much concerns me. So just putting it out there, you don't really need to respond if you don't want to, but just sharing where my thoughts are.
But we do have a great team up here. I mean, I agree with you, and I do think it starts at home. Yeah. I do think some of the parents, I think, I'll be honest, I've read the emails. They're not coming from the students, they're coming from the parents. So there are certainly conversations that are happening at home that I think we need to change the narrative. This isn't about one high school versus another. This isn't a rival game. This isn't anything like that. We're salvaging a district. You all see what's happening in our community. It's changing rapidly. Our costs are going to keep rising. We've all just said that. So we're trying to do the best that we can in a short amount of time, knowing that we have a very unique situation. We have a growing non-public population, so our transportation costs are going to keep increasing. So we're going to constantly have to be plugging a budget. So we are all trying to do the best that we can. So I really just feel like everyone needs to change this narrative a little bit. We're not trying to take away anyone's legacy, either one, either or. Doesn't matter if you were here for 20 years, doesn't matter if you were here for 60 years, everyone is valued. Listen, 20 years is no joke. I've been married 22 years. Listen, right? And 60 years is something to be proud of as well. But at the end of the day, we have to come together as one community. We all do still feel like we need extra information. There are certain things I want to look over. I do want you to know, as everyone pointed out, look, I know that there are certain board members up here that have been driving back and forth to the schools because they want to make sure they're making the right decision. I know people are poring over records and they're looking at data and they're looking at traffic reports, and we have our advocacy group who's fighting against our governor. So just know that no one sitting up here is just sitting.
Megan and I have gone to, none of us get paid to be up here, although some people might think we do. And Megan and I, in between our jobs, have been running to sitting with assemblymen, senators, really advocating for everyone. We even have besides our advocacy committee, we were mentioning Point Beach, right, raising money, and we have the Jackson Education Foundation. Again, 5 of us, also not paid, where we created the advocacy committee, we created the Education Foundation to raise funds, so this way we can have money to give for grants for our teachers, for scholarships for our students. I mean, we're all working really hard outside of even being on the Board of Ed, just to give all of the kids of Jackson something extra, right? We're trying to help everyone. So we need help. I love that everyone came out, but we need help.
I feel like we talk about how did we get here, and you hear that a lot, like, how did we get here? We got here, it's not really a surprise that we got here. Really, it's been coming. Ms. Permilli's been talking about it for 7 years. COVID kind of masked it, right? We were all coming, talking about masks and coming to school. And then we got some ESSER funds that Mr. Brzezinski's talking about. It kind of masked those budget deficits, right? You could use them in certain ways, whether it should be one-time use or not. And we talk about enrollment. Yeah, enrollment talked. We also got to bring on and onboard a preschool program. And again, we all have different opinions, but preschool has helped us in helping with some of our facilities and costs. You could argue for it and against it, right? But we're an S2 district. That means every year we're getting cut based on enrollment, based on your property values, okay? That's just a fact. We didn't make it up, okay? That's what the state's saying. I think that we're here because of all of those perfectly laid out pieces of information that just kind of came together. And I think the main thing I go back to every time I think about this is when you do anything with one-time use money, you can't, whatever decision our board comes up with, like at least my focus is, how are you not going, what's the length of time till you're going to say, oh, we have to do this again to balance our budget? And I get it, we don't have a crystal ball, we're not the state governor, right? We're all going to be electing one though, and you can look in and advocate in that regard, and I have my own opinions, I'll probably share them at some point, but we got here because we have cuts from state aid and we have enrollment drops, we have really great property value. And everybody in our town, whether we really are or we're not, we're looked upon as being able to afford more. And here we are.
Yep.
One thing, okay, I know I'm late to the party as far as everything's concerned, but I lived here my whole life. I taught here. I was an administrator here, okay? When I taught here in a little after 2000, there was over 3,000 kids in this building. Okay, this place was mobbed. But with that many kids in the building, the kids will work it out. They're resilient. With a little help from security once in a while and a little help from the teachers and the staff, they're going to work it out. We already got our 2 bands working it out. Okay, they will work it out.
Thank you. So going off of what Megan said, and I agree with you, Mr. Walsh, I think in time, things get worked out. My concern is the short term. Thinking about what Megan just said, I agree, and I think it's important, I'm just thinking another way, thinking out loud again, but that your long-term plans, kind of short-term for part of it long-term because of what you're saying. How are we going to sustain? This state makes it really, really hard to sustain, right? We have a state monitor who at any minute could say, you have to meet. I asked this in the last meeting. Is there any way they could force us to sell a building instead of renting a building or this or that? And essentially, we were told yes, because we have to balance the budget. That's what we were told. So this is a state it's very hard to get ahead of. There's always something that they say you cannot do or they won't give you, so you're constantly behind the ball. So with that, and the one thing that we've heard over and over and over again from clear presentations that the admin have been giving us is that we're seeing enrollment drops, and they're going to continue to drop. And so my question, I keep coming back to 5, 6, 7 years, we're going to be right back where we are. Are we making the best choice is the recommendation the best choice with knowing we're going to be right back where we are, and we're probably going to have to redistrict again? And I understand that might not be our responsibility. The next people might be up here, could be a totally, different population of people sitting at this dais. But I don't want to set students up to disrupt the town all over again when we don't have to do that. And so I keep thinking to myself, what are the biggest assets as far as schools in this town? And it is Liberty, and it is McAuliffe. I would bet that they are worth the most of all of our properties. And so if I'm thinking more long-term, are we going to eventually sell those two? Would it make sense to do that? Would that help sustain us? Now wait. These are complicated answers because what I've learned so much from being up here because, we're all learning. Like, none of us have ever gone through this before. This isn't a normal thing to go through. Even your admin hasn't gone through this before, right? So we're all learning, but we're learning things like you can't sell multiple schools at once. When you do sell a school, only certain money could go certain places, and there's a lot of nuances to it. So it's not a very easy question, but it is a question I believe we have to think about. And then think about, okay, if I totally came up with a new idea, and I said, make Memorial the high school, sell McAuliffe, use the McAuliffe money to fix up another middle school, use Liberty as the middle school until you could sell Liberty, and then when your numbers decrease, you bring everyone back together in a middle school, keep it centralized in the town. These are all things that we're going through, and as I said, every day, you're flip-flopping every day, but I just keep thinking about that. Like, these are our biggest assets. I think everyone up here knows we're going to be right back to this spot, like Megan was saying, in years to come.
But I want to just say something. If anybody's been around education a long time, you could take a vote. How hard is it, Mike, to come? You've been around education a long time. How hard in education is it to come across a good building? Like, how hard is it in education, right? In schools, you're dealing with taxpayer money, right? A lot of approvals, voting, et cetera. How hard is it to find a facility and that's state of the art?
Extremely.
Extremely.
I would say buildings turn over, technology-wise, about every 10 years. Okay, so the older you get, the less you're going to have as far as technology is concerned. When I was a science supervisor for 2 years in this district, I was part of the Prometheum project, where we brought Prometheum boards into the classrooms. What a great tool that was for teachers. Teachers are great, okay? Don't get me wrong, okay? But they're better when they have tools, all right? So the more tools you have, the better teacher you will become.
But you can't convince me that if you sell some of your biggest assets that you wouldn't have the money to get the tools. We could rebuild things, we could make things better that already exist, because some of these properties are probably worth a whole lot of money.
Does anyone else have anything that they want to relay to the public before we allow them to have their turn? Is there anything pressing that anybody wants to share? Okay. We're good? You look like you want to say something. Megan?
I mean, I could say a million things. I think there's pros and cons to every building that we have. I think in the end, it's going to be relying on the people in the buildings and the community to make those great things happen, regardless of where it's at. And I think, undoubtedly, right, there's going to be disappointment and joy, and that's life. And I could list and probably go on, right? We could go on and on about pros and cons, and we could argue this or we could argue that. And, again, you do read a lot of emails. Listen, a lot of people out there, you hit us below the belt. Thank you. We appreciate that. We're tough. We're up here. We're volunteering for your kids and the many kids whose kids aren't even in the district yet, right? We can't forget that just because our town's 100 square miles, that people don't live everywhere. Just because we've knocked down and had a lot of changes throughout this whole community, I feel like it's division. Like if I could go back to when, and Mike, you were here, right? When a referendum went out and we built all these elementary schools and we decided to not have a mega high school. I mean, Dan, you might have been here even as some type of person within a district.
But one thing too, you got to remember how many referendums have been voted down, okay, along the time. And Liberty High School was passed by like 12 votes. It was really, really tight when that vote came up. So it's not easy to pass a referendum, and it's probably harder now than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I know it always goes around that there were, at some point, 11,000 kids in this district. There were never. When Liberty opened, and you are right, Mike, at some point there were 3,000 kids, and so eventually they voted to open Liberty. Liberty opened with 9,681 kids in 2006. And then the population for the next 5 years stayed at around 9,500, and then it started to go down, way before anything changed in this township. So just keep those numbers in the back of your mind, because it started to decrease in 2013, 2014, 2015, 16, 17, all the way down to where we are now. So ask yourselves, why did the population start to go down? Is it necessarily, was it the schools? Was it people moving in town? Or maybe was there no more building going on in your township? Maybe there was nothing for people to, maybe so many things were said no to that there was nothing else being built. Take a look around. Is it thriving? Does it look like Marlboro? Is it a hustling, bustling township? I love it here. I thought I was going to have a Lowe's around the corner from me. I thought I was going to have a bar because by the ShopRite, right? It said liquor license. I thought, no way, we're going to have, right? I'll bring back a Bennigan's. Still waiting on the Bennigan's, people. So in reality, this is where we are, and we're trying to do so much for the population that we have for our district, and that's why we keep saying, while we're in the now, our decisions are not for the today, they're for the 3, 5, 7 years away. And those are, some of you have these younger children. We have to make sure our schools are sustainable for those children as well.
My last thing that I want to say is, we feel like we're declining, like Ally said, but we're still the 32nd largest school district in the state of New Jersey. We still have a ton of kids here, and we still have a lot of things to consider. So you have to remember when you're looking at the scope of your life and what you have in front of you, there's I'm not saying that every one of those 7,300 kids has one parent, right? But there's a decent number of parents that are looking for us to look at all their kids and not just the ones that we could see day to day or within our community, within our daily lives. And, I know that a lot of people don't want to hear that, but it is what we're doing up here. And it's not, it's not easy. And I wish that, it was a little bit easier than it is. And it would be easier, I think, if everybody supported us the same way Ms. Burnett does. So thank you.
Okay. All right, I think everybody's, anybody else? Oh, okay. All right, I'm going to need a motion to open it up to public forum.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Please sign in and state your name and whether or not you are a Jackson resident. Each person is allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. No person may speak more than once on the topic until all others have been heard. And I do just request everyone to be respectful, please, of all persons. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all very, very much for your efforts. This is one parent who greatly appreciates it. I just have 3 points. I'm hoping decisions can be made quickly regarding structures, because my conversation with the principal way back in my day in West Orange, who was involved with the consolidation of high schools, said that animosity that you are very concerned about, that gets dealt with when the kids are brought together and start planning it themselves. The children have to be involved together making decisions, not a top-down. It's kind of the bottom-up model needs to happen with those children. Point 2, and this has to do with our funding in S2. It's my feeling, and I don't know if it's correct, but the New Jersey Teachers Union generally has our governor's ear. And I want to know, where has the union been in supporting S2 districts? This funding model has to change, and the union has the numbers to kick it into action. We should not be like this. We should not have long-term worries like this. Okay? It shouldn't just be a few people going to Trenton. The union should be supporting our students. And then my last point is for the students. Please keep your futures in sight. Please do not let animosity or anger or anything screw up your future choices, because that will happen if you let that. Okay, we're one town, and no matter what the building is, you kids deserve a marvelous future. Please don't screw it up. Thank you.
How you doing? Don Lasco, Jackson Township resident, 44 years, police department, 21 years, traffic safety 12. Hello to the 4 or 5 of you that I met already. I know I'm on a time limit, so I'm going to speed read through this. On Tuesday, October 9, 2012, 16:45 hours, a 17-year-old Memorial student was pulled over for almost running through a red traffic signal. The vehicle failed to stop at the stop bar and was into the intersection blocking traffic when it finally came to a complete stop. This was observed by a police lieutenant, who then conducted a motor vehicle stop on the vehicle. After the lieutenant completed the motor vehicle stop, the driver was sent on her way. At 17:16 hours, dispatch received a 911 call regarding a motor vehicle crash on South Hope Chapel Road. Upon officers' arrival, the unidentified passenger of the vehicle was dead. The driver was severely injured. This was the same vehicle that was pulled over 31 minutes prior by the lieutenant. Driver was transported to Jersey Shore Trauma Center, where she was pronounced dead at 19:38 hours. When officers went to the driver's address to notify the parents, it was learned the deceased passenger was the driver's younger sister. They just lost both their daughters. Officers' investigation revealed the driver was running late to a school-sanctioned event at the Liberty High School. She was traveling at an unsafe speed and lost control of her vehicle, killing herself and her little sister. Case number for this is Incident 2012-040806. Public officials should minimize risks whenever possible, and tragedies like this should never happen. At the request of the Board of Education, the Traffic Safety Unit has pulled crash data, conducted traffic studies around both Memorial and Liberty High Schools. Following data leads us to the conclusion that the area surrounding Memorial High School would minimize the driving risk for our high school students and must be taken into professional consideration. In 2024, there are 184 crashes within 1 mile radius of Liberty High School, 10 of those occurring between the hours of 0600, 0800, and 29 between 1300 and 1500. Within a 1 mile radius of Memorial High School, there are only 68 crashes in 2024, 13 between the hours of 0600, 0800, and 7 between 1300 and 1500. I also have all the traffic study data on here, but you made it clear you don't give a shit about our numbers. It is the professional opinion of the Jackson Township Police Department's Traffic Safety Unit to establish the Memorial High School as the main high school. Memorial is more centralized within the township and has safer traffic statistics for new and inexperienced drivers. If Liberty is chosen as the high school, you'll see an increase in crash reports like the one I just described to you. Anyone who thinks Liberty should be the high school, come to my office. I'll show you the crash photos and the autopsy photos of the 2 little girls. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Jennifer Aronson. I have a student here at Memorial who's a sophomore, and I also have a proud graduate of the district in 2023. I want to thank everybody on the board and everybody on the committee for all their hard work, understanding that we are in a position that we cannot move from at this point, and I want to make it clear that I understand that. We have a lot of special forces on us that we cannot change. My one concern, and I will say I'm speaking from somebody who is going to be a soon-to-be junior in the district, is that I think what's under the iceberg of a lot of people in this room is that we have students who are in high school who are trying to move on to their future endeavors, whether that be college, and it's an enormous change for them. And while I understand for all the information you gave us that it's impossible to make this a slow transition, I'm wondering if there's any way we can make it that some of our high school students can at least finish out their high school careers in their home schools. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think that's why a lot of the people are here in this room. I understand that that might not be possible, but one of the things I really thought about is that, as mentioned before, this school that we're in was in fact 2 schools at one point. There's 2 cafeterias, 2 gyms. It's set up to be 2 schools. It's a way to potentially transition where you have students that are soon to be seniors, soon to be juniors, to maybe be able to finish their careers here in this school while also having other students in other grades in the Clayton wing. And it's going to allow the students that are in this room that are so concerned about not being able to finish their high school careers in their school to maybe have an avenue to do that. I also have a question, as I know that you've gone over so many of these models, but it's never been really clear to me why closing one of our other elementary schools is not an option, given the fact that we are having all this lower enrollment, and we are continuing to project lower enrollment. It hasn't really been clear to me on the slides why all of those options were not clearly delegated as to why that was discarded. It makes more sense to me that if we're having lower enrollment, that you would not look at having one of those schools close and giving us more transition time in these schools. I understand that that's a hard thing for me to say because I do not have a younger student in the
20 seconds.
district, and I have no idea how that affects enrollment, but I would like the committee to address that. Thank you.
Good evening, all. Jeff Henba, 43-year resident here. I have 2 kids in the district, also a police officer in Jackson. I touched on this last meeting, some of the projects around each school. I had to speed read it. I just want to go over some of it again. There's 35 projects already approved around Liberty High School. Some of the main ones are Jackson Trails, which is South Hope Chapel Road, 357 single-family homes, 1 house of worship. Another large one is Grawtown Estates, 482 single-family homes. Another thing that I forgot to mention is Pine Barrens Golf Course was recently sold, 420 acres, to the developer, Mordecai Acorn, who also is developing the development on South Hope Chapel Road as we speak. Memorial High School, there's only 4 projects approved at this moment. To note, or the important ones there's one on Leesville Road, a 3-story office building, 575 parking spaces, and on West Veterans Highway on the corner by the Wawa, there's 192 residences and 4 commercial buildings. That 4 schools that I keep seeing comments on Facebook about, it's not approved. It hasn't gone to the planning board. It's not going to the planning board until the end of December. It'll probably take a year to decide if they're going to approve it, and if they do, it's 3 to 5 years probably before they even start construction. The area around Jackson Memorial High School is extremely limited to build. To the south along Don Connor Boulevard is primarily owned by the state of New Jersey and is preserved land. Along Bowman Road to the west is also owned by the state of New Jersey, County of Ocean, and Township of Jackson. This area of land that stretches to Route 571 and West Veterans Highway is approximately 7.50 miles square, totaling 4,700 acres that is preserved and unbuildable. Around Liberty, there's only 2 parcels owned by Ocean County, one on South Hope Chapel Road and one on Whitesville Road, with total land preserved of approximately 3,000 acres. These properties are not adjacent to either school and will be surrounded by expansive building projects that have been already approved by the township. Just a couple other things. Did any of the board members speak to the actual bus drivers out on the road every day, not just the director of transportation? Dr. Osmond, on your point before, Liberty will be paid off this year, I believe. Unfortunately, my prediction is that in 3 to 5 years, a big developer will offer the township a lot of money for the Liberty building, and it will be sold, and we'll be back here again discussing the same stuff. Ms. Barakis, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. Traffic safety and the safety of all students is very important when you make these decisions. And my fear is in 2 to 3 years, the roadways near Liberty and McAuliffe will look like Cross Street looks like now. And on the private school student comment, with the 8 and on the private school student, I was in a meeting with the LSTA a couple weeks ago, who runs the busing for the private school students. 9,500 private school kids next year, 12,000 in the year 26, 27. So those prices, those costs are just going to continually increase. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Christopher Velati. I'm a Jackson resident, and I'm also been a special education teacher and a school principal. I saw the slide that mentions going to be about 40 kids in a class. That's not cohesive to learning. As opposed to laying off teachers, why not do some team teaching or some parallel teaching or station teaching in the classroom? Because 40 kids in a class isn't ideal for learning, for discovering knowledge, for gathering facts. I recommend possibly combining teachers in the class for team teaching or some other modality. As a young man, Mr. Walsh mentioned before, we have resources for these students as juniors, seniors, to gather knowledge and go forward, whether it's vocational school or academic school in college. They need these resources and materials to learn more and do more at the second stage in college, whether it's vocational or academic. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Scott Seidel, 26 years old, for almost my entire life, been a Jackson resident. Graduated Jackson Liberty 2016. 2 sisters graduated from this district, one from Memorial, one from Liberty. Just want to say I thank the board, thank the school district. I'm immensely lucky to have been here, even as a Rutgers graduate. My favorite class I've ever taken in school was AP Gov. Shout out to Mr. Grubb in Liberty. I plan on coming here today and just reiterating some points. I'm going to be very brief because I have some suggestions. Liberty has 400 more parking spots. I know to many that's not a big deal. I was a senior here too. Driving to school is important to many people, and I know many people think that that's not a big deal. When their son or daughter saves up for that car and they can't drive to school, I mean, you're not going to be happy. Liberty has double the amount of sports fields, a much larger gym. These are obvious points. A larger football stadium, over double the acreage. We don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. If the school population does rise, which, to be honest, it's probably not, but if it does, room for expansion, the school's landlocked. My sister graduated Memorial when it was over 3,000 students. She talked a 14-minute walk to class, 14 minutes. Liberty's designed circular. It's designed with larger hallways. It's designed for this. The taxpayers paid for this. Liberty's also clearly a lower cost to operate. I'm asking the board to do what's fiscally responsible. And people up here, please, we need to do what's fiscally responsible for the future of this town. I'll just pause on that for a second. I just ask that if anybody comes up here, please offer suggestions as well. I'm going to offer 2. First off, I ask that the board, in any way they can, if they petition the zoning and planning board, to pause all projects on Brewers Bridge, Hope Chapel, East Veterans Highway, and Cooks Bridge, if possible, projects that obviously have not started. All traffic studies done in those areas should be considered null and void. If they've been done in the past couple of years, if we're changing the schools, we know the traffic's going to increase. Just also like to say I live half a mile from Liberty. There's no traffic at 7 a.m. I lived there for 24 years. At other times of the day, yes. At other times of the day, I will agree, traffic is horrific in that area. At 7 a.m. when I leave for work, there's nobody there. I've lived there. You can come over, I'll give you a cup of coffee, we'll watch the lack of cars. I apologize. But a second suggestion is, I know people talk of rebranding. I agree. Rebranding is probably important to everybody. I also asked, again, that the board does what's fiscally responsible. Liberty did go through a rebrand, started when I was in school, adding the blue. It took years.
You have 20 seconds.
Just do what's responsible. My only suggestion to that is if rebranding was done, that it be done to McAuliffe, make everybody the Jaguar. It could be almost symbolic. Students will be Jaguars coming up, Lions to finish. Everybody's a Jaguar, everybody's a Lion, community comes together. Thank you.
If you cannot conduct yourself respectfully, I'm going to ask you to leave.
Okay, hello. My name's Carolyn Orecchio. Yes, I'm a Jackson resident. I have a lot of interesting perspectives because I have a student who's in 5th grade, a student who's in 9th grade. I'm also a teacher myself. I grew up and taught and also currently teach in Old Bridge. And if you know anything about Old Bridge, we've been through this. We've sold an elementary school, we've combined high schools, so I've lived through it and I'm also going through it on my teaching level also. So I wrote some stuff down so I didn't lose my thoughts, so I'm just gonna read that now. And I am nervous to speak, so please be with me. I'd first like to thank Mrs. Permilli and the administration for being willing and open to answer all the questions during this process. I hope everybody here took advantage of the email that was offered and asked actual questions that they were curious about instead of just complaining. I had a lot of personal questions about the 5th and 6th grade building, and almost all of them were answered on that frequently asked questions document. And I actually was not in favor of it because that's where my daughter's going to be at first, and then after hearing the answers to my questions, I do feel much better about it. So I think asking actual questions is helpful in this process. So thank you for that. A couple of opinions for me, and I know this is maybe different from everybody else in the room, but I'm hoping that everyone's thinking not just about which high school is going to be used. It's not the only important thing here in this plan. It is important, don't get me wrong, but you also do have younger students who are just as important, and they're going to be here in the district longer than the high schoolers. The high schoolers are on their way out. My daughter, who's in 5th going into 6th, she's got a lot of years left here, and I was hopeful for what's to come for her, okay? So hopefully everyone's thinking about not just the high schoolers, but also for your younger students as well. There's a lot of passion and energy in this room, and a lot of what we're hearing is like those kids are almost gonna get like the leftovers, and that's probably not the message that we wanna be sending to them. Going along with that, we have to keep in mind that neither high school is closing, like building-wise, like they're both going to be used. So the way I think about it is when we're trying to decide which high school building should be used, we have to keep in mind one's going to be a high school and one's going to be a middle school. So we should think about which building is better suited as a high school and then which building is better suited as a middle school. And in my personal opinion, and it's not just because my child goes there, Liberty to me just seems like the more logical choice to be a high school building. It was built with that in mind. It has the facilities, and to use it as a middle school to me would almost be a waste. Okay, I'm sorry. And I think this building could fit more as a middle school. I'll skip a couple things. Not to say so much about traffic and not to say that there's no accidents or anything about Liberty, but I personally had to come to this building a lot over the summer for the theater camp, and I know parents came here for the rec camp too, and they were...
Time's up.
Okay. It is possible to have traffic on this side of town too, and I lived it when we had to come here when they were repaving the road. Okay.
We have a lot of people. I know, I'm sorry, we have to, thank you. You can come back at the end. You may come back.
Am I allowed to speak? Dear members of the Board of Administration, my name is Jaden Stokes. I'm a freshman at Jackson Memorial High School, and I'm here to express my deep concern for the well-being of my fellow classmates, friends, and teachers. The area Liberty is located in has obvious traffic and safety issues. I beg you guys to retain the name Memorial for our esteemed school. The name Memorial holds profound significance for our community, symbolizing not only a place of learning, but also a tribute to the values and history that we hold dear. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Kosak. I'm a Jackson resident, and I also work in the district. Speaking to what you were saying about worrying about safety and the police, department being closer to Memorial, safety should always be a concern, and there's been animosity I'm in this town for over 20 years. There's always been animosity, unfortunately, on either side of the town. So that should have always been something to be on our high list of our children attending school each and every day and feeling safe. At any given moment, I can get a letter from the district and ask me to move to a different school on the other side of town. Never, ever would I dream to treat a child on, let's say, the other side of town, as it's been spoken of in so many times like that, differently because of their address. The animosity that we saw just a little while ago it's mind-boggling to me. These are people that, my children play sports. They have kids on their sports teams that are on both sides of town. They walk off that field and they're fine. They're fine. Let's give them some credit. This is all coming from home. These are the parents who are doing this. It's not the children. I think this audience should be the children and let the parents stay home and let these kids make the decision. It's their future. It's very hurtful to see that we have clapping going on and eyes coming this way. We're all the same community. We're all neighbors. It's insane. It's crazy to me. And I'm so sad to see this happening.
Hi, I'm Debbie Homan. I have 2 daughters in elementary school. We moved to Jackson about 8 years ago, and I will be honest, I came here because of the academic achievement. I know what this academic institution offers, and I think if we are thinking long-term sustainability, how we can protect the education of future Jackson kids, we need to consider, as Dr. Osmond shared before, our biggest assets. We need to strongly consider leasing instead of selling. I heard there was also talk at some point about selling gets to Jackson Township. I think we all know that the township is changing, and so I don't think that that's a good idea either. But in terms of protecting our futures for our children, looking at the safety, the developments that are happening on the Liberty side of town, I think it makes most sense if we're going to lease a building to really consider Jackson Liberty. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Elaine Koger, and I was asked to speak. I'm a Jackson resident. Once again, we're here, and once again, the decision is still pending. It's disturbing that a lot of people have heard that the board members have been openly going around town saying they are not letting Memorial go. So, my question is, are you more concerned with saving a building than investing in our children's future? And have those board members even bothered to look at the data? One of the emails you received was from a Liberty mom. She stated that she works in the court system and unfortunately cannot work with certain people because it's considered a conflict of interest. So that brings the question of how parents of children that are also on the board can vote, and it's not going to be a conflict of interest. Clearly it is, and it's obviously shown at the last board meeting. This is like a real-life episode of Married with Children, where Al Bundy is living in the past as his greatest football player that ever walked the hallways and is still trying to fit into his jersey. Well, guess what? This is not Polk High School. This is Jackson. Parents and respectfully board members, you have lived your high school years. Now it's time to be responsible adults and do what's best for our children, your children, and our school system's future. Voting with emotion turns into voting with incompetence. Voting based on factual data is the responsible thing to do. Doing some minimal research of schools that have merged in the recent past, not only in New Jersey, but in surrounding states. Out of 17, guess what? They found out that 17 experienced very similar problems to ours, and not one picked an older school. Do you realize what laughing stocks our town and our board would be and look like? Liberty has everything, even a full recording studio for musical artists. You would be taking away quality tools for a better education to stay with school and for traditional purposes. I thank you.
Thank you for allowing me 3 minutes to speak this evening. My name is Steve Wisniewski, and I have 3 children in our district. Tonight, I'm not here to weigh one high school against the other, but to discuss the impacts of the plan that you put forward and ask some questions that haven't been asked before final decisions have been made. When the board votes to approve this plan, 2,400 students, or 35% of our population, will be reassigned to a new school. And there is an imbalance as the majority of the 2,400 students that will be moving are on the Getz and Memorial academic track. But the changes don't just impact students, as more than 300 staff members will be required to relocate. This number doesn't include those who will shift within their current building to accommodate new grade level structures or programs. And this leads me to several questions. 1, what are the financial costs associated with moving 300 staff members, and how will they be covered? Can the district manage this internally, or will they need to hire a third-party moving company? And if that's so, what cost? Given the district's 2% budget cap does not account for the rising healthcare costs, how will this transition be funded? What cost does rebranding have at 3 schools? Rebranding just isn't new uniforms and logos. It involves reflooring gymnasiums, updating signage, repainting buildings, and installing new scoreboards. Can all of this really be completed within 3 summer months? Will academic continuity be maintained, especially for our rising seniors? School culture takes years to develop, but our seniors don't have years to wait. They only have a few short months to showcase their academic and extracurricular activities before applying to college. Will their academic experience remain strong, or will the growing pains negatively impact their final year? The plan also references an expected $8 million savings from the closing of Getz. Will the district need these funds simply to make payroll, or will they be reinvested into schools for infrastructure, staffing, and academic programming? If Getz is sold or repurposed as a private or charter school, are there additional hidden costs related to the transportation or shared services as required by the Department of Education? And finally, all of these decisions are being made before February 28th, when the state releases its official funding allocations. We are planning these massive changes with an anticipated $4.5 million reduction in state aid, but that number could be higher or hopefully lower. Additionally, has the district developed a financial pro forma for the years beyond 25-26? Or will we be in the same situation in the future because we are running out of schools to sell? Beyond the logistics and finances, we must consider the human impact. The potential for staff layoffs, teacher turnover, and administrative reductions could significantly impact not only the success of this plan, but also the district morale. Jackson schools have a deeply rooted sense of community, and we must ensure when the dust settles, we still have the same support in our town. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Elena Nelson, and I am a student at Jackson Liberty High School. As we all know today, we face a decision that will shape the future, choosing one of our equally amazing schools to serve as our new high school. But this is more than just selecting a name and a mascot. It's about choosing excellence, opportunity, in a place where success is not just encouraged, but also expected. Statistically speaking, our school has bigger parking space for both students and staff, a bus ramp, 3 points of entry, and much more. And Liberty is much newer. On the topic of traffic, yes, the school is farther, and having your kids drive for a longer time is scary. And I know, because I, as well, am a new driver, but traffic is everywhere, and not just in our area. And if anything, there's always the option to use the busing. Also in addition, no matter what school we choose, one school is losing their original school. But this does not mean we will lose the memories of our school. And I can say this confidently because I was one of the students from the now closed elementary school, Rosenauer. Thank you for your time and have a good night.
Hi guys, Vin Mistretta, Jackson resident. First of all, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to really, let this decision sink in and try to get all the information. I know the township appreciates it. It's a big decision, so we do thank all the work that you guys are doing. I do want to address the animosity concerns. I'm in a unique position here where I came up through the school. About 25 years ago, I graduated from Getz Middle School. There's a whole new crop of kids that graduated from McAuliffe Middle School. We both came together in the fall of 2003, and believe it or not, there was not gang fights, fist fights, any sort of nonsense in the hallways. Everybody got along, and it was the norm. So to say that there's always been animosity here between both sides of town and where people live, I think that's a little ridiculous, and it's assuming a lot. It is the responsibility. When we come together, it's the responsibility of the teachers, coaches, advisors, administrators to set the tone and set the culture from the beginning. No matter what school we are at, it is their and our responsibility to do that as a professional and as someone who takes pride in the town, whether you grew up here or you just work here. That is what's going to build a strong school system and a strong education. So that's first and foremost. The problem that I'm seeing is the longer that we wait, the more this divide happens. The more you get clapping here, booing here. So my question is, there are some really good questions being addressed by the board. And in 2 weeks, if you guys decide to vote no on the plan that was presented, does that mean that the whole thing, we start from square one? Or can you at that point go back into an executive meeting or something, come out with a new plan or a restructured plan and re-vote? Because honestly, at this point, like you guys said, the band is coming together and figuring things out. Mr. Walsh said, kids are resilient. They can't be resilient if we don't give them the opportunity to be resilient. We have to bring the kids together, the staffs together, the buildings together, all right? I have pride in this building. I graduated from this building. I believe this is the right one. But really, my vote and opinion doesn't matter in that situation. What I really believe is we have to get everybody together on the same page as soon as possible so we can start moving forward. Thank you.
Hello, Veronica Burnett, teacher, Jackson resident. I have ties to both sides of town. I have mentioned this before. And I have so much love and pride in my entire community. It makes me really sad today to feel so strongly the divisiveness that is, one side of the room and the other side of the room. And it's hurtful. I'm sure that there are kids that I coached over on that side, and there are kids that I taught and instruct over on this side. Miss Larson and I, who is the drama club advisor here at Memorial, she and I have already spoken about getting our groups together and letting them bond and get to know each other, because the merge is happening, whether we like it or not. The two high schools are coming together. Somebody's going to be unhappy, but what we need to do is get the kids together so we can start to heal. We want to become one great Jackson. And right now, I feel like there are so many closed minds that you're not willing to let that happen. And we have to fix that. The kids will do it. We keep using the word traffic as like a scapegoat. I had a kid who went here who drove to Liberty. We are all concerned about the traffic, but what is also not happening is the traffic is not going to change. It's going to get worse. And I actually called the zoning board today, and there are 4 or 5 schools approved on this side of town. I don't know when they're going to be built, but traffic is going to get worse. So why can't we be coming up with a plan to fix the traffic? Why can't we make the traffic better? Because we want everybody to be safe. Wherever you are in Jackson, we want you to be safe. And the board, you have this awesome, weighty decision to make. So much responsibility in making this decision. And I can't imagine how difficult that must be to put your own allegiances and your own traditions aside to make the decision that is best for all the students in Jackson. But they have to make the decision for all the students, not half the students. And we have to make sure that whatever decision gets made, we are going to make the best of it. And it has to come from you guys. It can't be us against them. Hatfields and the McCoys, we have to be one Jackson.
Good day. Good day, everyone. Isaac Elsner, Jackson resident for a length of time. Before I get to my main point, I do want to add on to the two other points, starting with the principal's very valid point of smaller class sizes. As someone who the district paid to go to private school, mainly Collier High School, he is so right about smaller class sizes. I can't emphasize that enough, especially with what is likely going to happen, the two high schools merging. You're adding a lot of students from who knows where into whatever you decide to, and it's pretty likely that the class sizes are likely going up depending on how you handle the teacher staffing. And I know the guy on the left over there said that Memorial at one point had 3K students, but nowadays with the research we've had with various school stuff in America, it's just shown that smaller class sizes are better, and I can attest to that. It's very important. And the second point before I go on to my main point is the rebrand, which I'm a bit conflicted on this because on the one hand, yes, it definitely would cost money to, well, change the entire identity, and that hasn't worked for some actual sports teams, Chicago Fire of the MLS. But on the other hand, the boos from this section kind of just shows that not everyone would likely be willing to join the Jackson, whatever you guys decide, because, the football rivalry has been going on for a reasonable amount of years now. I mean, I think Liberty's technically younger by me by a year, but it's gonna be whatever you guys decide. You guys make a new mascot or something. You guys gotta unite together. But my main point I wanna discuss tonight is the future beyond this, because I've been thinking about the middle schools in particular, and particularly mainly because of S2, which my concern is, does this plan last a year before we have to make more cuts? Because I do want to mention Sylvia Rosenauer's only closed last year, and it kind of does feel a bit quickly how we're in February and we're already discussing the future and cutting a high school, which, keep in mind, is a very big deal because 2 high schools is better than 1, as someone probably said before. But yeah, I'm just hoping you guys, basically I'm just trying to say is you got to figure out the future because you can't keep selling schools forever, and we don't know what's going to happen after this state or governor election, because even if we elect a new guy, it doesn't mean we're going to change the formula immediately. There's so many other stuff that's going chaotic in New Jersey right now, and we don't know if S2 is going to change. So
You have 20 seconds.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm a Jackson resident for about 33 years. I live on the north side of town, north of 195. I'm on the Freehold border. So we're like the forgotten side of town. We're a small pocket that is districted to Crawford, McCullough, and Liberty. I had a 2021 graduate of Liberty, and I have a junior in Liberty. We are so far removed from all of the town that if anyone should complain about traffic, it's us, because we're basically north of 195. But I drive my daughter to school in the morning, and I can make it in less than 15 minutes. There's really not traffic. And I have multiple ways that I can arrive at Liberty at any time of the day. Yes, my daughter's going to be a driver in September, so I'm a little nervous, but I'm glad that you're putting in the resources for the students and the parents to make them more aware of driver safety, and anything that we can enjoin all the parents and students together to arrive at that, make them more aware of these safety issues is appreciated. As far as the fiscal part of it, I am a CPA for 30 years, so I really appreciate all of the work that you've put into this. It is not easy to come up with these numbers. And as far as unity, I find it's kind of strange because my son attended Liberty for 4 years. He also was in the ROTC program here for 3 years. He had attended with a great group of kids from Liberty and Memorial, and you know where they all got along, and that's tone at the top, because that came from Major. You know, that these kids were both part of this town. My son also was a Boy Scout from first grade until high school and attained his Eagle Scout, and he did that with both Memorial and Liberty high schoolers. I was a Girl Scout leader for 6 years. I had kids in both sides of town in my troop. It is possible, but it comes from tone at the top, from the parents, the teachers, the educators, and the leaders. We have to show our children that we are united too, and is really, really important. So, let's keep our kids safe, and let's find ways that we all can unify together, whether it be like PTSN, the parent teachers, or even parent committees with the children, so we can bring this town together and keep our kids safe. That's it.
Hi, my name's Jim Osmond. I have a few points to make. I first want to thank everyone for getting involved. I wish there was always this many people who came out to Board of Education meetings and got involved. There's always important things happening in your school district, and getting involved in many ways are valuable tools and ways to get inside knowledge of what's happening in the schools and being informed. I can tell you, as someone who wants to believe that I am well informed, the people who are sitting up here are taking this amazingly seriously. For those of you who think that they're not, I assure you that they are. I happen to be married to one of them, and I can assure you that they are not sleeping. They are not doing many of the things that they would much prefer to be doing. They are doing everything they can in the best interests of all of the children in this school district. And for anyone who thinks otherwise, I assure you, you are wrong. They are, day and night, they are doing what they can to make the best, most informed decisions in the best interests of the children of this community. With that said, I'm so glad that I'm starting to hear more people talk about unity, because the divisiveness is atrocious. Everyone's got an opinion. No matter who you are, no matter where you're from, you've got an opinion. Your opinion is your opinion. It's self-serving. It's admittedly self-serving. We all have our own opinions. Trust me, I've got plenty of them. But my opinions don't matter. I've got to think about what's in the best interests of the community as a whole, and at the end of the day, I've got to trust these people up here to make that decision. Now, changing my conversation to this direction, the biggest thing that I'd like to say before I walk away is, and I heard someone say it a little while ago, we've got to get to a decision, because all of this is not going to stop until a decision is made. And so I would hope that it would, but clearly it's not going to until a decision is made. And when a decision is made, now we can pick up the pieces and we can pull back together. And our people, our staff members can pull together, as was just said. We can get together. Our students can start to reunite. The kids that were on all the same sports teams growing up can come back together again and stop this ridiculous banter back and forth, Liberty, Memorial, blah, blah, blah. We're all one town. You all grew up in the same town. You're all together. Stop with the this side, that side stuff. We're all one town. Come
You have 20
together,
seconds.
be together, be one Jackson, and be proud to be from Jackson. That's all I have. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tara. I'm a Jackson resident coming up now on 10 years. I have a graduate of Jackson Liberty last year, and I have a current freshman. I just want to start off. I am from New York. I know you guys are talking about traffic. This is nothing. I understand it might be Jackson traffic, but you do what you got to do, and I think it's ridiculous. I shouldn't say it's ridiculous, because it is a concern, and I totally get it, and I don't want to disregard anybody's. But, like, I live across the street from Liberty. I still can get in and out of my driveway. Sometimes I might have to wait a minute, but I do get out. I am representing some of my other parents. It's a group of different types of parents, so I want to also thank the board, and I understand the difficult decisions you have, and I appreciate you listening to everybody's concerns, and I just hope we make the correct decision on the student's account. If you reject the proposal created by the committee that's been consisted of Jackson School District's best, these are the members that are consisted of principals, vice principals, central administration, board members, supervisors, as well as teachers and parents. We should appreciate the hours and months of the time that they have spent coming up with the best solution for our current and future students of the district. We surveyed the community, went out, you did results, you took an email, you got all your information that you need. I know that their decisions and discussions on committee put the best interests of the districts and the students first, not letting emotions or ties to certain places get in the way. The fact that some of the community feels that Memorial would be better high school versus Liberty. The facts are, right now, currently, for an academic, Jackson Liberty High School is the best choice for a high school academically, and all the amenities and the newer school. A lot of concerned parents, obviously, again, on the traffic surrounding Liberty. Liberty's been open for almost 20 years, and they've never been a discussion until now about traffic concerns. What just happened in the past months is now being concerned is around Liberty. I know that also part of this is going to go into a 5-7-year plan. I hate to say it, but what everybody's concerned about that's happening on the Liberty side, it's gonna come to this side too. You're gonna have to deal with it again later at some point. They drive to and work. There's children that drive from the Memorial side to go to work to the Liberty side 3-4 times a week. We let our kids drive to the Freehold Mall. They go to Great Adventure. They go to the beaches in the summer. You just let them go. There's no concerns for that. During the start and the end time of the school, there's not a lot of extra traffic. It's normal volume. They can go in.
You have 20 seconds.
Please consider that the recommendation as presented so our students can continue to have the best experience that Jackson has to offer. Thank you very much.
My name is Kim Nelson. I'm a Jackson resident for most of my life. I have 2 kids in the district, 1 graduated. While I do have a high school student, my main concern is my 4th grader because we're going to be here and she's going to be coming up through the district. Now, she came into the school system during COVID, so those children have that already going for them. Now, you're saying that we're probably going to be doing this in another 5 to 6 years, possibly. I heard that during the commenting here. There's a possibility of another redistricting. How long is this going to hold us over? Is this a Band-Aid, or is this going to be a permanent solution? Do we have any numbers as to how long this is going to hold this, or are these kids going to get reshuffled around again? And this year they're going to be going over to McAuliffe. I hear all this stuff for the high school students, what we're doing for them. What is going on for these students that the 4th graders are not adjusted for this. The 5th graders were getting adjusted to going into another school. These kids are just being surprised. You're moving over. Is there any plans for that grade level like we're doing for all the other students that we're talking about tonight? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Salias. Before we start, I wanted to tell everyone that, first and foremost, the Jackson School District is not a construction company, nor are we landlords. So thinking about Liberty as being the best facility is because we don't have to put as much money into it in regards to some of the other buildings in town, nor should we be putting money into it while the kids are there either and them suffering through construction process. With that being said, I prepared something. As we navigate the financial landscape of our school district, it's essential to address the current situation regarding our preschool annex for the community to hear. While funds from the state have aided getting the annex ready for the preschoolers, it is important to recognize that these resources could have also been allocated elsewhere. The consideration of relocating and retrofitting another building for our preschool annex so that the high school could remain at Memorial raises concerns. Such a move could incur significant expenditures that our district cannot afford, especially as we project a deficit for the upcoming year. It's vital for us to prioritize our funding and make decisions that support our children's education without unnecessary and frivolous financial strain, particularly if the reluctance stems from a preference for a different high school. Moreover, with the 7th and 8th graders being proposed to be situated at Memorial, we have an opportunity to reconfigure our space effectively. This can include relocating some offices to enhance our operational efficiency, especially given the findings of the architectural assessment highlighting the urgent need for renovations at the transportation hub due to its poor air quality. Traffic flow around Memorial remains a challenge, as I have observed firsthand myself. Many cars find themselves caught at the light while trying to merge onto Don Connor, which further complicates our daily operations. So the traffic argument is not one-sided. We need to take a realistic, practical approach that not only addresses our financial priorities, but also considers the practical aspects of our facilities layout and community traffic patterns. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Drew Gibson, and I'm a teacher here at Jackson Memorial High School. I've been here for probably, since 2002. So I want to thank all of you guys, the Board of Education members, for my job, but also for this, all the work you put into this and everything like that. And, you know, obviously, I'm not from this town, but like Mr. Walsh said earlier, you know, I was here before it all started. I was here during it all, you know what I mean? And the kids were good, and we're talking about uniting as a town. And, you know, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I really don't. You know, the kids were great back then. The kids it's going to stink for is the juniors this year, because they're going to have to go to a new high school, and it's going to be very tough for them. You know, I'm a year or two away from retirement, and that's my biggest thing, is I'm going to have to change my last year, so it's going to be tough for them. The younger kids, they're going to adapt. The sophomores, it's going to be a little bit tougher. Freshmen, it's going to be a little bit easier. 8th graders, 7th graders, they're going to come up together, and they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. They're all going to come together as a town, and there won't be the problems that everybody thinks that we're going to have. You know, and I sit here and watch, and it, you know, kind of not cracks me up, but I look at the divide. You know, and I look at all the red shirts over there, and I hear us talk about we need to unite, but you know, that's everybody's together on for Jackson, for Liberty, whatever it may be. I wear my red, but we do need to unite. We do need to unite, and we will. And the kids will be fine. The kids will be fine. They will adapt to it. They will be great. So I think, you know, for you guys, you have to look long term, 5, 6 years. What is going to happen then? You know, you can't base. I know we all care about the kids. We all care about what's going to happen to them, and the kids are going to be fine. And next year's kids is going to be tough on. But in 6, 7 years, where are we going to be? That's where the decision has to be made. What is the best decision long term? And like somebody said before, you know, my decision, what I think doesn't matter. Obviously, I love Jackson Memorial. I've been here forever. I have great memories. I've worked with great people. You know what I mean? I've worked with great students. And I'm sure everybody that worked at Liberty can say the exact same thing. You know, so we will come together. But what is the best thing for our town in 5, 6 years from now? And what's the best decision that can be made for the people that live in this town, the kids, and everyone? You know, so I want to thank you for your time. I know we will come together as a town. I know it will be great, and it'll be, the next 25 years will be wonderful in Jackson. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shannon Pazinko. I am a resident of Jackson. I would just really like to extend my sincere appreciation to the superintendent, to the entire administration, to the SRRP committee for their dedication and hard work. Your commitment to the success and well-being of our students and staff is truly commendable. I would like to express my deep gratitude to the Board of Education for their ongoing support, vision, and efforts in ensuring that our educational system thrives. I understand this is a highly emotional decision for everyone involved, whether you are a parent, a teacher, a coach, a district employee, a student, and a family member. I would like to point out that where the police station is located does not matter. We currently operate 2 high schools, 2 middle schools, 5 elementary schools. The police do not sit in the headquarters all day because they are out on patrol. Lastly, I just hope you can use the facts, the data, and the research that have been provided by the experts to make a unified vote on the superintendent's recommendations and be objective and not emotional. Thank you so much for your time and all that you do. It's truly appreciated.
Good evening, Board. My name is Chris Adolphson. I have 6 children who have gone through the school system or still in the school system. I was born and raised in Lakewood. I went through the entire Lakewood school system all the way through graduation. I have seen what's happened in the Lakewood schools with everything that's gone over there. Schools have closed, the funding over there has dropped, and the education level for the students themselves has disappeared. I want to make sure that whatever decision you guys make is not just a Band-Aid solution, that my children who are still going through the school system will not face what's happened over there. So my question to you is, have you reached out to the Lakewood board and learned from their mistakes, learned what they've tried to do and where it hasn't worked? The other thing I wanted to talk about is what happens if this vote takes place and it fails? How long are you guys going to take to come up with another plan, have another vote, and will that be done in time to enact those changes prior to the budget expiring? The last thing I want to talk about is you've considered this, and I hope you have. What happens if you have a program where there's too many children wanting to do that program when you consolidate schools? How are you going to address that? Thank you.
My name's Stacy Ricciardi. I'm a resident of Jackson. I want to thank the board. I especially want to thank Mr. McCarron and Ms. Kaz. You guys responded to my email, so that's appreciative. Thank you. I'm just going to speak more on perspective of unity. I, like Carolyn, was part of the Old Bridge High School merger in the 90s. I was a freshman. I got booted out of my school to another school, and I have to tell you, we didn't have our parents involved, right? There's no social media. We staged a walkout. We didn't want it. And guess what? We came together, and there was no issue. I actually met my husband. He was from the other side of town, and I have some great friends from it. So I think a lot of the issues with unity will come together once our kids are together, and I think us as parents need to step back. And I also just want to say that addressing the safety issue with the school and the police station, I have to say you aren't making us Liberty parents feel like all warm and fuzzy based on your recommendation about how safer it is here than it is where our children go now. And I just want to say, like, are you saying that my 7th grader, because I will have a 7th grader, who could potentially be at Liberty is not as safe as my senior who could potentially be at Memorial? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Diane Leopold. I'm a teacher in the district, 27 years. One thing I want to comment on is, as you're talking about the technology that we have advancements, we have our Promethean boards, which are now outdated. We have Chromebooks, which are now outdated. We have screens that come down that we use our computers in order to give our kids videos and access to games and access to online tools. There are times when the technology doesn't work. It doesn't matter which building you're in, your technology doesn't work. So what do? You pick up a marker, you go to the whiteboard, and you teach your kids. Or if you still have a green board, you're picking up a piece of chalk and you're still teaching your kids. The building and the technology, that's not what makes education. It's the teachers who make education. So we're going to do whatever needs to be done. We're going to adapt however it needs to be adapted. We're going to change whatever needs to be changed. We're going to roll out whatever needs to be rolled out, because that's what we do. We put our kids first. And what needs to be heard is not just what I'm saying here, but parents need to understand you need to stop just clapping for your person. You might like what one person says about one side of town, but you really need to hear what everybody is saying. It's not about one building or 2 buildings. It's about this. And if you think that technology is what teaches your kids, ask them what they learn when they're on social media on their phones. Thanks, and thank you. Have a good night.
Hello, I'm Ace Koberger. I've been in the Jackson School District my whole life. I am on the Jackson girls bowling team. I say just Jackson because this year the Liberty girls and Memorial girls have merged. We talk about the fighting that comes between Liberty and Memorial. I don't see that as big of an issue as we see it is, because when I heard that we were merging, I was terrified that there was going to be a line that there would just be between the Liberty and Memorial girls, because We were from different schools. We've never spoken to each other before, and it never happened. I was going to quit because I was scared of being with the other girls because I heard about the fighting, about the other things, the prejudice that comes between them, but it never happened. Those girls are my best friends. I've never met kinder girls in my life, and I don't regret my decision within staying because we talk about the fighting within kids who have never met each other before, and I feel like we should more see this as an issue when it becomes closer because we have never had the chance to meet these other kids. Our schools don't do anything where we have had the chance to be able to get to know them. We just hear the fighting, and I feel like most of the fighting comes from the fact that we don't know these kids. We see these kids and we heard about the fighting. We hear that they said this about us. We heard that they did this to us, but we don't actually know them. We don't know what they have said. They could have said great things about us, but we wouldn't know because we had never had the chance to speak to each other. We talk about the fighting, but it's not going to be as big of an issue if we actually had the chance to meet together before any of this happened. I was nervous about the schools' teams merging at first, and I thought that it shouldn't have happened. I thought that it was unfair that the schools were going to merge because I liked just having the Liberty team. But I think that our teams merging was the best decision that could have been made. Thank you.
Can I go again, or do I have to wait?
Sorry, everyone has to, since you already spoke, everyone else has to speak first, and you have to go last, okay? The rules, thank you.
Hi, Andrea Frangella, parent of 2 girls in the district. I also work in one of the elementary schools. I just have a few things to say. Through all of this, the one thing I never worried about was the value of education that these kids are going to get from the teachers in the building. So that is never an issue in my mind from being in the schools and having 2 kids, 6th grade and 9th grade. Never a question. I was never worried about that, and I hope that shouldn't be an issue for anybody in this room or watching at home. Sports should be competitive. High school sports should be competitive. I know it stinks if your kid's a senior and they've played a sport all through high school. I get it. But they should be competitive. So not everybody's going to get on the team, and I think that's okay. Advancement in technology 100% enhances education. It's not all about education, but technology enhances your education, and to think that that's not a step up, to me, is not, doesn't make sense to me. No one is doubting that we can't fit everybody in this building. That's not, I don't think anyone's doubting that. But that's like choosing a 60-year-old car over a 20-year-old car that you're choosing to drive your family around in. It just, to me, it doesn't make sense. Mr. Baginski, week after week, discusses S2 funding, and if you don't understand that it's not something he could tell you about for next year, by this point, it's like beating a dead horse. We don't know next year until next year. So let's give him a break to stop explaining what S2 funding is. It's been going on for 7, 8 years now. And the last thing I have to say is prolonging a vote by the next meeting is doing a huge disservice to the administration. You have 7 months till the first day of school. It's doing a disservice to the administration, to the parents, to the teachers, to the kids. We have to start February 19th. So I really hope you guys can come together with a decision by then. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ava. I'm a senior at Jackson Liberty, and I just wanted to say, I remember when I was entering middle school, there were 3 elementary schools. I think it was 3 elementary schools. I don't really remember because we all came together and nothing really mattered after that. But there were, I believe, 3 elementary schools that funneled into my middle school. I was thrilled, like, yay, new friends, new people to get to know. We were all so excited for our schools to come together. I met some of my best friends who I'm still so close with, and that wouldn't have happened if our schools didn't come together. It was so much fun. What's changed from then to now? Why were we so excited to combine back then, but so hesitant to combine and hostile towards each other now? This hate hasn't always been in us. It hasn't always been an us against them divide. I don't know what's changed as we've grown, but this really is all about perspective. And I'm graduating, but I have so many friends from Memorial that I would have loved to go to school with. So it just really is something to think about and all about perspective.
Yeah, Tom Smith. I've been in Jackson for 36 years. Had 2 students graduate. One's currently a freshman. And this is really a message I want to give the students, because where I went to high school in Berkeley, we had grades 7 through 12 packed into one building with split sessions for the entire time I was there and for years before I went there. And it took about 20 years to get a new school built. And my senior class was the last in the packed school. And the class after mine that had to get split, all our sports teams got split. Those kids didn't want to go to the brand new school in their town, set off from Berkeley. So the only thing I'd want to say to the students is, yeah, it's painful. It's a consolidation event, and I mean, you're all better together. It's the opposite of what I saw in high school, and I think I would look at it as a better opportunity, because you're bringing all the best from 2 schools into one, and I think that's just the way the students should look at it. Everything's going to improve as far as what they're drawing from, so just for the students.
Hello, everyone. My name is Darren Troutwine. I think I was on the minutes earlier today. I'm a unpaid coach at Jackson Memorial for the last 3 years, both in the fall and the spring. So I start my work day about 3 or 4 hours earlier than everyone else, so I can come over to the school and coach these students. The other thing, I have a club, and I have 60 kids right now that are practicing volleyball in both of the gyms in this high school. And those kids come from the Memorial side of town, they come from the Liberty side of town, and I challenge any of the adults in this room to go over there, and if it's not your kid, to show me which one's the Liberty kid and which one's the Memorial kid based on how they interact with each other. The other thing that I see, and I've been on the sidelines or on the court coaching, and countless times I've had both girls volleyball teams as well as the boys volleyball teams being the loudest cheerleaders for their brother or sister team that was in Jackson. So my take on it is, I think that from being around these students all the time, all day, I was coaching at soccer in the town before that. We had Liberty kids, we had Memorial kids, we had kids from out of town. I personally feel that the division and the animosity is adult-driven and not parent-driven. I actually just saw 2 Liberty kids get up and walk from that side and go over to this side and shake a couple of the guys' hands, who I know from Memorial. So I think that the divisiveness is honestly a product of what the parents are putting on social media, the fabrication that they're putting on social media, the lies that they're putting on social media, the exaggerations that they're putting on social media. If you want to speak in here, or you want to let people know what's going on, use data, find resources, cite references, because that's the information that'll hold up in here and nothing else will. The other thing that I just wanted to mention is about the technology. I have a senior in Memorial now, and I have a freshman in Memorial now as well, right? The technology thing, schools that have greater technology have better education, is fake. It's false, and it's proven that's false. So in my day job, I work for a rather large company, and I sit in C-suite meetings, and I advise them on how to make decisions, and all we use in those meetings are sticky notes and Sharpies. And we make decisions that affect millions and millions of lives on this planet. So the technology thing, whether you have a computer or a whiteboard or whatever, it's not true, it's not proven, it's not factual, right? So the technology doesn't matter, it's a matter, the idea of bringing these kids together, the parents not getting involved in it, and letting these kids come together as they already do, as they are doing in the gym right down there, the gym right over there, walking over here, and some of the players over here.
I'm sorry, sir. Thank you.
I got you, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Allison Malone. I'm a resident of Jackson for quite a few years. I have a son who's a senior and a daughter who's a sophomore at Memorial. First off, thank you very much to the administration, the Board of Ed. I know, some of you, and I know the countless hours that are spent on this, and it's very much appreciated if it's not always represented that way. Just in the spirit of what he was just saying about the parents, and, I agree with that. So I think in the spirit of that, even as we're sitting in this meeting tonight, people are posting pictures on social media. The switch plate that's behind Ms. Kaz. Jackson Memorial is in great shape. So that's what we don't need, like pictures of that on Facebook. And it's not a kid, because it's on Facebook, so it's a parent. So let's just not do those things, and let's not do that. And Jackson Memorial is a great school, but you know what? At the end of the day, my daughter just wants to know where she's going to be in September. Like, whether it's here, she will be thrilled. If it's at Liberty, she will also make her way through, and by the third day, she'll know where her classrooms are, and she'll know all that stuff. So I'm sorry I'm getting emotional, but I just hope for the kids' sake that if it does wind up at Liberty, that there's orientations, that these kids are shown around so as not to, make it feel like outsiders, when they show up there on their first day of school. And I think that's about it. And, hopefully, everything is going to turn out good in the end, so.
Hi, Darlene Demarest, Jackson resident over 20 years. It's very upsetting to me as someone that sat on the previous redistricting committee. I thought this was going to be a good thing because my kids were the product of the schools being divided. We're coming together. It's going to be a powerhouse again. It's going to be one town again. It's going to be a good thing. And coming together and not knowing, like, you're in Jackson, it's one town. The kids all grew up, baseball, Holbrook, wrestling. They all come up. For the most part, they know each other. But Miss Cass and I, we went to regional high school where you had 3 totally different towns come together. And I hate to say how many years later, but we're still a very close-knit group. Your memories are your memories no matter what. The busing, the school, yes, there's traffic, but I dare anybody to try to make a left out of either building at prime time. It's tough. The animosity's gotta go. The animosity comes from the parents. I know that from the first time when we divided. If the parents don't want the kids driving, the proven safest way to get to school is on a school bus. And if you do want your kids driving, and everybody wants their seniors to drive, apparently there's more spots on Liberty. So you have your choice. Be like a city, take a bus, or allow your kids to drive and go where there's more spaces. And because of the animosity, I would bring it to the board to look into getting some resource officers to be in whichever building you choose to make sure they're safe, not just one in a building, especially if you're all coming together, you need more. And you're probably gonna need someone to direct traffic no matter Memorial or Liberty, because getting in and out, it doesn't matter. Good luck.
Hey, again, I'm not going to talk about traffic for a change. With that being said, I just want to piggyback off Coach Mistretta, Coach Osmond, and Coach Gibson. I referred to them as coaches. I respect them. We do need to unite these kids as soon as possible. With that being said, why aren't the decisions on who will be coaching these sports teams for the 25-26 school year decided yet, so they can meet with these teams and hire proper staff? We don't want current coaches and student athletes leaving this district because they don't know who will be coaching these teams. Also, the head coaching jobs of all these teams should go to the best person for the job, the best candidate, the most productive, not who has been in the district the longest. We have great student athletes here. We always have. And it's been going on forever. And we don't want that to disappear. And that goes for next school year. I don't understand why these decisions can't be made tomorrow when the merging of the schools shouldn't matter on when you announce who's going to coach the teams. We know the schools are merging. It has no effect on when the coaches should be announced. And the last thing I have on the sports is, I remember Ms. Permilli said this last meeting, why can't the sixth graders play middle school sports? Some sixth graders in the school district should be playing for the middle school team. I believe last year 5 or 6 sixth graders made the Getz middle school baseball team. So why should that not be allowed? Why should they not be allowed to play middle school sports? And that's all I have. Thank you.
This will be the last person to speak. We're going to close public forum after this, okay? Thank you.
Just wanted to ask some questions. I know I made statements before. Just wanted to, obviously I don't expect these to be answered, but just 3 questions I wanted to leave the board with. Just to reiterate, a lot of people said this. What's the decision process if you vote no on February 19th? I mean, there's, like people said, there's 7 months to school district, to the school next year. I don't really know what you guys would do. I work in data analytics. I personally enjoyed when the fixed cost was showed to us. I think that's very important. What's the cost per student? What's the cost per student in 5 years? There's inflation. You can estimate the inflation. What's the cost per student in 10 years? Whichever school is chosen. I think I speak, not trying to speak for everybody. I think we can recognize that choosing the newer school is cheaper in general, just by default. But what's the actual difference? Is it a large difference? Is it a small difference? And I know I made a statement before about the zoning and planning board. I don't know if you guys can actually do anything. I don't know if you can use your bully pulpit and advocate to pause projects that haven't started. I would hope that you can. If not, obviously, maybe we need to petition those boards as taxpayers and voters. And I know that those boards are appointed by the council, so I understand that we may need to go that route as well, but just those questions, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I need a motion to close public forum.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I just want to thank everyone for coming up and speaking as well. We are certainly taking all your comments to heart. I just want you to all know that. Thank you. I need a motion to move the official meeting schedule.
Motion.
Do you want to ask?
Oh, wait.
She wants to respond to the question.
Oh, yeah. Yes, let's have Ms. Permilli respond to some of those questions. I thought we were going to do it at the very end. I apologize.
Oh, no worries. And again, as I've said in our past meeting, I may not answer everyone's questions. If not tonight, then we will certainly address them in the Q&A or individually ask you to reach out to us. For example, I know there was a lot of questions from one gentleman that we have heard from before, and we do plan on answering many of those questions throughout our Q&A and also individually. So continue to send them to us. I know you've had some fiscal questions. And please be patient. This was a lot of information, and I want to be able to go through it from start to finish. So there was a couple of comments in regards to making sure that this decision happens. I do know that the board is, I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. I know that the board is working hard to be able to make a decision as soon as possible. It is a very weighted decision, and they are doing all of their homework and working hard to make an informed decision. And so I just want to reiterate that, and that they do want to make a decision soon so that we can begin moving forward and planning. And we really are waiting for a final decision because nothing is official until it is finalized by a board vote. And should something change, we don't want to start work and then have to undo work because it is a short timeline. But please know we do have draft timelines in place, ready to go as soon as we have a vote. We're not just sitting here doing nothing. We have timelines in place that we're going to begin to roll out as soon as possible and form committees as soon as possible. The student committee, as many people spoke about, all of that is in the works. We do have plans for that. So we are thinking. I do want to thank the police department for the information that they have shared. It is important information to review and consider, and we do appreciate that. There's been some comment, we've had some actual questions, also an email and also tonight about slowing the process down and being able to let some high school seniors finish out in their current schools. And our hearts go out for them, of course, and we're going to try and make everything as smooth as possible for students and help them in that transition. But unfortunately, when you break up grade levels like that, you won't have the same opportunities and availabilities of things. By splitting programs across schools, it isn't going to work for the district in regards to being able to offer equitable programs for all students. That's the bottom line for us here. We're here for students. That's our purpose. And offering equitable programming and opportunities for all must be the first thing considered here. And that doesn't allow us to do that, unfortunately. And again, you heard from Mr. Baginski, myself several times, why we have to act now. Otherwise, these things are at great risk. We have been band-aiding, piecemealing, being creative for 7 years, and been advocating for 7 years. Last year was the moment in time, and some of you may remember, when we had to make that very tough decision to sell Rosenauer. We didn't want to do that, but we were forced to have a balanced budget. We had no choice. And unfortunately, if we continue down this path, we will continue to take things away from students. And for all of those who asked questions about what about the future, that's what this is about: sustaining programs and keeping this excellent school district in place together. And we need to unite and come together. And I want to thank everybody who spoke about that tonight. We are an incredible staff here. I say it all the time. It's not just lip service. So many staff members, some who came out tonight to speak about bringing kids together. This is what they do. They're wonderful at it, and we will make sure students are okay. We will offer opportunities for orientations. We will offer opportunities for students to see things, and for our staff, too. Our staff is going through great change. We'll offer opportunities for them to see their new spaces. All of that is important in these transitions. Elementary schools, and I appreciate that this question was asked and that there was some comments about our elementary students. A lot of dialogue coming up to the mic is about our high school students and some of our 5th and 6th grade. Our early learners were absolutely considered in strategic planning. Lots of conversation about it. In our elementary schools currently, we have a lack of space. Honestly, we have added a significant preschool program that serves this community. Free preschool for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds is an incredible opportunity for this community. I wish I would have had that, how much money I spent on childcare. So it's an incredible opportunity, not only for parents to have that for their children, but for the children themselves to begin their learning process with us earlier is going to make significant impact on their education long term. So it's an incredible program, not only for students and for parents, but also fiscally. You've heard me say it before. The state funds that well. That is state aid that comes to us. And it really does help offset a lot of expenses for us. So our elementary schools have a lot of preschool classrooms. Currently, many of our elementary schools have their unified arts on carts. There's no separate classrooms. So our students, and this was something our elementary staff spoke about in strategic planning, that some of our students never really get to leave their classroom all day, especially in the winter months. That's difficult. So that was taken into consideration by removing our 5th grade from the elementary schools. That provides some additional space to have those unified arts for our teachers and our students. And it also, by keeping the preschool annex here, allows for us to have overflow for any preschool classrooms that we may need to add in the future. So lots of things were discussed, lots of variables, like I said before, that not everybody may understand. So it is important that we keep and we do remove the 5th grade, because we do experience overcrowding happening right now on many levels in our elementary schools. Now, in the long term, as I said earlier, we'll see what happens with enrollment. And again, we planned for a flat enrollment based on what our incoming numbers have been over the last few years. But unfortunately, we're in a situation where we really can't predict exactly what that's going to look like in enrollment. To talk about futuristic plans, we have done the best we can with the information we have currently, knowing that those variables especially here in Jackson, can change quickly, not only on enrollment, but state aid. Here we are, February, we have to present a tentative budget in March. Do we have state aid numbers? How do you plan futuristically when you don't know from year to year what you're dealing with for revenue? One of your only main, you have a few, but one of your biggest revenue sources. So it becomes very difficult to make those projections, but we have done that out 5 years. And we strongly feel that this plan should be able to carry us well into the future, preserving programs and extracurriculars. 40 students in a class, that comment came up, that was if we don't restructure. It may even be higher in some areas. Remembering the purpose of restructuring is to lower permanent operational costs. By lowering permanently operational costs from year to year, that carries you versus one-year fixes, like many of the board members talked about earlier, does not benefit the district. So this is a more permanent reduction to our overall budget. The cost to rebranding and financial costs to move, we recognize there are some expenses to that. The rebranding process we're looking at for middle school, high school, coming together with committees of students and teachers, will have to be a long year process. It's not going to be a quick few months process. Need to lay out a plan, and we're well aware of this. When we work with that committee, it'll be what can we do in the short term, what's the recommendation for rebranding, and how do we make that plan come to life over a year or so, so that we can make sure that we are able to do it and do it well. And I know that we also have, excuse me, some volunteers who have also stepped up and said they would be willing to help us and help with assistance. And I will be honest, I'm also going to talk to PTNs and also to the Jackson Education Foundation about how they can help support that. Working together is the way to make this happen successfully for our students. There were some questions around selling schools. We'll run out of schools to sell eventually, and absolutely agree with you 100%. And actually said that to the Department of Ed Assistant Commissioners when I went and presented at a hearing recently about the funding formula, and urged them yet again to differentiate that formula based on unique circumstances like Jackson. Overall, the money that comes from selling a building will be put back into our buildings and our facilities, and offset the budget expenses there to then help, again, lower operational costs. We believe that selling another building will take us through several years of not having to be in a budget deficit. And obviously, we hope many factors will change at that point. I would assume some enrollment will drop. We'll continue to make some reductions based on enrollment, and that's how we see, looking into the future, our projections. And we'll also outline that a little bit more in our Q&A for everybody, so that you can see it in some writing as well. There were some questions about what happens if the board votes no to the recommendation, to the whole thing, or to partials of it. My understanding is whatever the board decides and votes on, they'll also make a recommendation to me, to what they would like to see either happen or ask me to do something. But they are very much informed about how important it is and the process that we all have to take as administrators and staff in this district to roll this plan out. So I'm sure that they will make a good recommendation of what they see should happen next. And that, I assume, Mr. Zittimer, that's pretty much what would happen normally if a vote is overturned, correct?
Yeah, that's correct, and as I understand it, this board fully intends to come to a final decision at our next meeting. I think everybody understands the timeline that we're operating under and the fact that we need to vote on this. So I don't want to speak for anybody, but I think, Ms. Cass, that's pretty much an accurate account of how the board plans to operate at the next meeting.
Again, I want to thank those people who spoke tonight. I know the board is thankful for their inputs to consider, and I really do appreciate the message of unity. We're here for kids, and let's work together and think of the power behind this for our students if all of us are moving in the same direction to support them. Just want to see if I have anything else. Staffing decisions, we have a timeline for that we're ready to launch as soon as there's a decision as well. The same for any staff who are listening, the same for the timeline for packing. We have that and getting ready to launch that as well as soon as there is a decision. All right, I think that's where I'm going to stop tonight, but I will revisit my notes tomorrow and update any Q&A and or reach out to anybody else who I think had some more questions that maybe I didn't get to. So thank you.
Thank you. I need a motion. No. I need a motion to approve the official meeting schedule.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Gardella.
Yes.
Ms. Gardella.
Yes.
Mr. McCarron.
Yes.
Ms. Barocas.
Yes.
Dr. Osmond.
Yes.
Ms. Rivera.
Yes.
Ms. Cass. Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Excuse me one second, everyone. We're still conducting some business up here, so if you can please take your parties out to the hallway and continue your conversation so as not to be disruptive to us, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Real quick, before you all leave, and we're going to do board comments. I don't know if anyone wants to listen to us. Before we get to all that, just for something a little fun, I do wear a second hat. I am the president of the Jackson Education Foundation as well. We're having a comedy night on February 27th, so if you want to come out and support the district, we do scholarships for the kids and teacher grants throughout the district. So just want to give a shout out to that. You know, we want to help the district out as much as we can. Thank you. And we'll start board comments that way.
Well, we're sitting here doing little announcements. Okay, seniors, scholarships close February 13th. Make sure you get your applications in online. Okay, another thing, I'd like to give a shout out to the girls wrestling team who won the Shore Conference over the weekend. I know this is difficult, but we have to remember what our objectives are as a board. Objective number one is to make sure that our students have the best education possible. Our teachers are going nowhere. They may move their classroom. Listen, I taught for 25 years in 25 different classrooms. It happens. You move around, okay? They're not going anywhere, though. The best thing that we have are our staff, and they're very good. I know some people, I said about technology before, it's a tool, it helps, okay? But it doesn't help if you don't know how to use it, and our teachers know how to use it. Thank you.
Just wanted to thank everybody for coming out tonight and participating in this meeting. All the emails, everybody getting up and speaking, we are listening. Obviously, we're going to come to a decision next meeting. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for hanging around and listening to our
closing remarks. I just wrote a couple of things down. So I just want to point out again, a couple of people came up who have younger kids and said, don't forget about the younger kids. And I 100% agree with you with that. They are going to be with us longer than our older kids. And I think you have to give some props to the committee who really did think about the younger kids, because if you look at that 5th and 6th, 7th, 8th grade model, that's a really, really smart model when you only have 2 grades in a school. And the reality is, my kids were older when COVID hit. And so they already had their foundation. So they were able to move along pretty well, right? But, I have friends who had kids in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, and they lost their foundation. And so that model of 5, 6 in one building, 7, 8 in another will really help those learning gaps. I really, really believe that. By the time you have to revisit this due to numbers, it's a new cohort of kids coming up who didn't have COVID in those, fundamental years. So, please don't think that we're not thinking about the younger kids, because that model is really good for that. I also want to comment on, somebody came up and they said, how could we vote? How could we have the power to vote if we have kids in the district? And I just want to remind people that you voted us in and gave us this responsibility. And the reality is, if everybody up here didn't vote who has a child or a grandchild in the district, you wouldn't have enough people to vote. And that's just going to slow this process even more. So as I said before, just because we're debating the pros and cons over and over and over again, that should be seen as a good thing. You wouldn't want us just to sit up here and be like, oh, this is what we were told, so let's just do this, right? Like, this is something you really have to think about. So yes, 1 minute I'm thinking this school, the next minute I'm thinking that school, but that is a good thing, because you're trying to find the gaps and what did you miss and what is the best decision for everybody, right? I'm staying up super late. I know all of the people up here are up super late and, analyzing things. And, as I said at the beginning, my kids are out of the district, so we're volunteering our time to make sure it's good for all the people coming up. And I think you need to remember that. And then I also want to talk about one other thing. Somebody came up and they said, and I agree with this, let's have a plan to fix traffic, but I need you to remember that this is not the board who could do that, right? We're not a traffic board. We're here for education. And so, of course, you have to look at, can you get kids to school? How long are they going to be on the bus? And things that have to do with the educational part of it. But we agree with you. This town does need to fix traffic. We do need the police to work on that. But that's not us. So we only could do what we can do, and we're all trying to do our best here. But please don't think that because we're questioning things and analyzing things, that that's a bad thing. Also, I really don't want people to twist my words. I have a legitimate concern about safety. Safety should always be number 1 in a school, okay? I'm in education, right? I understand that when I go to work, it should be number 1 for students, for teachers, for administrators, everyone in that building. And so that is not saying that any kid who's currently in a school is not safe, but this is going to be a new population of people, a larger population of people. And so you can't, a board and a district can't be naive to the fact that when schools get larger and there's more people, there could potentially be more problems. And so yes, that should be in the conversation as well. And that shouldn't insult people, right? Because we should be debating all of the pros and cons before we come and make a decision that at the end of the day, when I see my neighbors in ShopRite, I could feel like I did the right thing, right? Regardless of which school we chose. So that's what we're trying to do up here. So thank you all for coming and, supporting us.
I want to thank everyone for coming, viewing us live stream, your inputs and comments. We all live in one zip code. There is unnecessary fears of the unknown. We need to come together and unification as one Jackson. We have a lot of considerations, dialogue, fact findings, including state aid and actual numbers. We also look at the buildings that are, that are in considerations. I travel a lot on Hope Chapel Road around Liberty during Tier 1. and I don't see too many traffic concerns during that time. My concerns are that Getz building, according to the engineer's analysis, is a tear down, and in excess to do the upgrades, their multi-million dollars are needed. And then the transportation depot that's housed on Liberty campus is newer, and also the transportation department on Don Connor Boulevard needs a complete renovation. We are doing the best we can during this critical time, and everyone have a wonderful and safe night.
So someone asked if we, did we consider the elementary schools and some of the other things. Believe me, none of us wanted to do this. We've asked about closing elementary schools. We've asked about combining pre-Ks like they did in Howell. We've asked about, can we extend it a whole year, right, push it out? Everything that you have thought about, besides being up hours, and we cry all the time. My husband will tell you I am up all hours. I check the emails, I'm always looking up information. It is definitely taking a toll, well, on all of you, is taking a toll on our families. Listen, I understand graduation is a really big deal. Like I said, I have a daughter who will be a senior next year. Of course, you want to graduate from the school that you're in. Anyone have a kid that graduated during COVID? 8th grade? High school? They never went back to their school. They weren't in their school their whole year, and they didn't walk across the stage. We have the tape at home. Anyone have family that live in California? Guess what? Some of them don't have a high school right now to even go to. They're happy to be anywhere to be educated. So when you email us and when you talk about your own kid, and while I understand, I have empathy for you, I do, I get it. Stop and think about what's going on around you and that other kids are not able to graduate from the schools that they're in. It's happened, they'll survive, and they're gonna do really well. Anyway, thanks for coming out. It was nice to see everyone. And like Tina mentioned, I'm the vice president of the Jackson Education Foundation, and I'd like to fill 120 seats. So please sign up and join us on February 27th. Thank you and have a good night. Oh, sorry, did I say Where? Sorry. It's been a long night.
I mimic a lot of the same sentiment as the board members that have spoken. The committee did great work. They came up with an educational model that really takes into consideration the development of students at every grade level. And, a lot of us are affected in many ways. You don't necessarily, you might have elected us in, but doesn't mean you necessarily know all of our ins and outs. And, it is, as the young lady said, it's scary when you're thinking of the unknown and what you don't know. We have to shake our head because, like Allison said, the committee did look at so many different models. Even we might have thrown out things that you're throwing out tonight, right? To say, can we do this and can we do that? And what would be the best for the town? In the end, consolidation has to happen because we're facing, a fiscal issue that none of us can control, right? Things that are out of our control are always out of our control. We can only do then what's in our control, and that's what we're trying to do. And we understand that facility matters to a lot of people, and, I get that. In the end, I said it before, and I'll say it again, someone along the line is gonna be disappointed and someone's gonna be happy, and that's just what's gonna happen in life, right? Some days we're happy, and some days we're disappointed. And, there are concerns, It's tough because we have looked at every single piece of data, and there's really respectable people coming up to tell us a lot of data, and they throw us a sucker punch like we haven't looked. I've read a traffic report 700 times. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what I feel on the report because I feel like in the end, we have to drive in a town, and Jackson's not the same town it was 25 years ago. I drove over there at 3:45, and it's like Bricktown, and it's not really what everybody's used to. Does that mean it's right or wrong? No, I just feel like in the end, right, everybody in this town, I feel, in the meetings that I was in, I think that the police are feeling the same type of pressures that we feel. They're dealing with their own constraints. And again, here we are, feeling the pressure of their own constraints. That's my personal opinion. And, I just want all of our kids to have great experiences, and I think parents write the narrative and adults write the narrative, and the narrative was a lot better tonight, so thank you. Because it did give us some things to think about, and I appreciate it. I wrote down some questions to ask, and thank you for your participation tonight.
I just want to thank everyone for coming to speak as well, and I did the same thing. I think I wrote some things down. There were a few things that are running through my head from things that some of you had said out there, a few things that maybe I didn't think of, or that I just was like, oh, I need to ask that question, kind of a thing. Again, we are all taking this very seriously. We're all looking at unity. When I look at my decisions, I mean, I'm looking at the fiscal responsibility, I'm looking at the sustainability, I'm looking at the longevity, and I'm also looking at the facilities. So we will have a vote on the 19th. We all know that we have to. We talked about how that works if there is something that we need to change or we don't agree with. So we have a process for that. So there's 7 of us, so even, let's just say it's not agreed, it's 4 and 3. That's why there's 7. So there will be a vote on the 19th. And the last thing that I have to say is just the word unity is in community. So pay attention to that, okay? And everyone have a good night. Thank you. Can I have a motion to close?
Motion.
By acclamation, right? Oh, I need a second. By acclamation.